This is the meeting of the Sunshine Ordinance Task Force for January 15th, 2019. The time is 5:34 p.m. On the call the roll. Member Kate.
Present.
Kate present. Member LaHood.
Present.
LaHood present. Member Josh Wolf.
Present.
Josh Wolf present. Copra absent. Tesla absent. Member Martin.
Present.
Martin present. Member Kanata. Kanata absent. Vice Chair Highland.
Present.
Highland present. Member Yankee.
Present.
Yankee present. Member Hinsey.
Present.
Hinsey present. Chair Wolf.
Present.
Wolf present. We have a quorum. There are no agenda changes that I know of at this time. Item number 2 on the agenda, public comment. Members of the public may address the committee on matters that are within the committee's jurisdiction but not on today's agenda. Are there any members of the public for public comment today? There being none, next on the agenda is item number 3, file number 18096, Sunshine Ordinance Task Force Strategic Planning and Orientation.
Not using mics.
The mics are on the table.
Okay.
All those little dots on the table are the mics.
Okay.
Okay, so I guess we can talk about it all in here. So, thank you, welcome everybody.
I have
What do you have?
agendas if you want to pass,
Oh, okay.
pass those out.
Do people need an agenda? We have it up on the screen too.
Yeah.
All right, so what we're, so as part of the orientation part, so let me just ask, Rick, do you want to, you need to roll, right?
Pretty quick, yeah. I can kind of sum up in a couple of minutes what I want to say.
Okay, if folks, we're not taking any action here. This is generally to be an informal meeting, and so I want to be able to since we have property in this section here, I want to, Rick started talking about some stuff because we were just informally talking before the meeting started. We'll, on the record now, we'll let him, finish up so he can get to his next event.
Okay,
It's Rick Nee.
for those of you who don't know me, I'm Richard Nee. I served on the task force for 12 years from 2002 to 2014. I am still active on Sunshine Matters as a member of the Society of Professional Journalists Northern California Freedom of Information Committee, and I'm active in a group called Sanford Systems for Sunshine, which is a local activist group. I'm also in Californians Aware and the First Amendment Coalition, all Sunshine activist organizations. As you know, the voters in November passed Proposition B, which includes a provision allowing the Board of Supervisors to amend the Sunshine Ordinance to the extent that it is not inconsistent with the purpose or intent of the original ordinance. That language is problematic, of course, because the purpose and intent, if there are any amendments proposed, would be defined by the very people who are making those proposals, as well as the city attorney. And the criterion as to whether they met purpose or intent, or were inconsistent or not inconsistent, that also would be decided by the people whom the Sunshine Ordinance is supposed to hold accountable. So there is some question as to whether that particular provision, board empowerment provision, would pass legal muster. Whether anybody decides to challenge it in court, I don't know. I haven't seen any indications thereof. But it's something that the task force might want to keep in mind. Having said that, I would caution or alert the task force on a number of things. Supervisor Peskin and his legislative aide, Lee Heppner, who used to be on the task force, are, as we speak, working on legislation to amend the Sunshine Ordinance. Whether they would do anything besides remedying the vacancy on task force seat number 4. Whether they would go beyond that remains to be seen. How they would remedy that is something that we need to be vigilant of. The question is, would they replace New America Media with another organization such as SPJ, or would they just say, well, it's just easier if the board appoints directly as it does with seat number 3, which is another journalist seat. So that remains to be seen. And then there is a question of what other amendments they might try to throw in there. There is also a question of what amendments other supervisors might try to throw in there. It wasn't long ago that the Board of Supervisors had a very anti-sunshine majority with people like Scott Wiener, David Chu, and Mark Farrell. That could happen again. And with the board now empowered to amend the sunshine ordinance, those of us who oppose Proposition B feel that there is very definitely the risk that the sunshine ordinance, if not in the short term, then in the long term, could be weakened by the Board of Supervisors. That's pretty much what I had to say. Eternal vigilance is absolutely necessary by this task force and by anyone else who cares about sunshine. I'm happy to take any questions.
One of the things that you mentioned is that they may slip this in, if that is their intent, into a subcommittee or another body that needed. So I guess my vigilance means just checking all the agenda items and making sure that there's not something in there. And if there is, aside from showing up and making public comment, what else can we do?
Well, good question. Good point you raised. It is possible that any amendments would not be put out there as standalone. They might try to slip it in as a rider to the budget, the budget bill, who knows? Well, they might do that. I mean, the board empowerment provision basically was a rider into Prop B, which was supposed to be about personal data privacy. Personal data privacy is a fine thing, but slipping that in as a rider, it was really a deceptive thing to do. It was their way of getting the voters to pass it.
And the second part is, aside from showing up and making public comment, how else would we tackle it? Obviously,
I am not sure there is anything that the task force could do other than making its thoughts known. I don't think the task force would be legally empowered to go to court to challenge and to make any challenges to an amendment that the board tried to introduce. Although, who knows? I mean, the question is, if you did, who would represent you? Would it be Nick Cole? I don't think so.
so we open a file on it. If we sense that it's going in a direction that may limit sunshine on our charter, we don't open a file, open a file, or even a case against someone. I know we adjudicate cases that others bring to us, but is that something?
Well, if it was a violation of sunshine.
Right. Kind of have to get to that point.
Yeah, but on the particular merits of any amendment that they put forward, even if it contradicts, the only thing we could say is if it's basically the way Prop B is worded, that it should not go against the intent of the findings and purposes. And the key thing there is the word intent. It's subjective. Who determines what intent is?
And who determines whether a given proposed amendment meets that criterion of consistent with intent?
Right.
And that's why we propose Prop B, because it really is fox guarding the henhouse. People whom the ordinance is supposed to hold accountable, they're the ones to make that decision.
So I have a question, Rick. So you talked about the Board of Supervisors making amendments. Does this allow the mayor to bring an amendment forward?
The mayor, well, certainly the mayor could not unilaterally do it, but the mayor could certainly propose to the Board of Supervisors that they do something, sure.
I guess you could do it via the Board of Supervisors.
Right, and then, but in order for it to become active, the mayor would have to sign an approved action by the board.
There may be something, I'm not sure what the,
I don't think that the board can change a law on its own without approval from the mayor.
granted, but if the mayor, my question is, if the mayor doesn't act one way or the other,
Oh, then it becomes.
would it become law, or would it constitute a pocket veto? I don't know that. Victor, would you happen to know that?
If the mayor doesn't sign it, it is deemed approved.
Okay.
So it's like after 30 days or some period of
I
time?
believe it's 10 days.
10 days?
But there is another thing to kind of add to the political mix. London Breed has, her record on sunshine is certainly not exemplary. And let's say, for discussion's sake, that the Board of Supervisors does pass an amendment or two that are actually pro-sunshine, there's always that chance that Mayor Breed would veto it. So,
It would have to go back to the voters?
well, it would have to
If
go
the
back to
supervisors
the
want it.
voters, or maybe, try and get the supervisors to override the veto.
Override the veto. Well, so one of the things that I was thinking about doing was having some discussion about this, if there are any specific points that we wanted to communicate to the Board of Supervisors, would be in the 2018 annual report, which still needs to be submitted. And usually, do that sometime around March or April. And that would be a good time, because usually we just hand it to them, but, any one of us, myself, can make a presentation of it at the same time, and point out this particular point, because this was a major significant event that affects the work that we do moving forward. And if we're not going to be, if we're going to be continually not being consulted with prior to such significant changes, then, we should at least let them know in some, certain terms. I don't want to necessarily say no in certain terms, because we don't necessarily have that power or leverage or authority, but we can at least let them know.
Yeah, I think we should definitely put something in there about it. The question is, how much of it can we put in there without crossing some line of our authority? So,
We have no authority.
yeah.
Our authority is limited to compelling somebody to produce documents, and even then, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What's the consequence for,
Yeah.
that goes down to 6734, to the
Yeah.
official misconduct. So, that's some of the things that we could talk about today, is how do we create procedure? If this thing happens, then this next thing happens, because the different, there's authority in the Sunshine Ordinance for us, and then there is process in order to affect that. So we want to...
Comments for you.
Thank you. They are very,
Mr.
very much.
Yankee, I assume you're a Red Sox fan.
You're not a Red Sox fan? Excuse me? I'm from Boston.
We should talk about that a little bit, because it's just more of a operational, procedural thing. It's not necessarily delving on anybody's, personal position on how they would vote, but just so we all have an understanding of the process, because over the years, there's been some interesting discussion about process, and whether this should apply or this should apply, and that kind of thing, how it should be applied. And we don't want to get stuck and head down a rabbit's hole because we haven't pre-thought or predetermined how that should be. So, yeah.
There was a couple of years ago, some talk, I don't know if it was by Rick's group or another group, about giving a little more power to, matters that came out of this body for financial fines.
Right, so the idea was to overhaul Sunshine Ordinance, make the task force into a full commission with enforcement power, the way the Ethics Commission has the same kind of power. And the Ethics Commission was created the same way. It was created by the voters. But it was given, and because they oversee, they actually are like an agent of the state Fair Political Practices Commission for the campaign side, the elections and lobbyist side, but then they also have the ability to take up sunshine matters at the same time. So one of the things that did come out that some of you may or may not know, last year, was it last year? No, a couple of years ago, before I came back on here, whether we had been working on an agreement to, because the Ethics Commission was not adjudicating, or at least finding in the way we found violations on willful failure, 6734 cases. So we're finding, you have a public official who's violating 3, 4, 5 times in 6 months. It's like, okay, obviously this is willful. They don't want to, obey the law. So we find them at willful failure, send it over to the Ethics Commission, and then they vote no. And so I finally found out why that is. And the reason why is because they didn't want the same thing to happen that was experienced during the Sheriff McCarini's case, where he was found for official misconduct and by the Ethics Commission, and then all that decision goes to the mayor, and the mayor, by him or herself, makes the decision whether that person should be removed. And this is the removal of a person from office who's elected by the people. And the question was this really a valid court? Did they actually adjudicate it properly, in that kind of way? So they are very nervous about taking up any 6734 cases, because willful failure equals official misconduct. And once it hits their world, it converts into official misconduct. Then they have to have official misconduct hearing, which is a whole, human resources, personnel type of thing. Becomes non-sunshine at that point, becomes, code of conduct. So what came out of rewriting somewhat some joint rules, and for them writing up a whole new set of rules around how they process sunshine, was that we could send them any case, any order of determination we want for enforcement. If we send multiples of the same, or the same agency, or the same person, or the same department, whatever it is that keeps violating in the same period of time, after we could, say, okay, after the 4th time, this enough is enough, they're really being recalcitrant, we can send the order over with a memorandum saying, we urge you to find willful failure on this. This is now the 4th time. So then they have something to discuss, and they can, more easily they wouldn't have to just take a 6734 order and then try to adjudicate it. They can maybe, because they could take our regular ODs and enforce them on fines and other penalties anyway. So it doesn't have to be a 6734. 6734 for willful failure, again, automatically official misconduct. So this was kind of a little bit of a happy medium that they would say, if you were to send that over as a regular order of determination and not 6734, then we probably would have supported your position. So,
And in the past, we've never sent 32, we only sent 34.
right, because there wasn't any process for sending them an OD. They wouldn't accept it. Now, understand when we do that it goes through their discovery department. They have their own investigative unit that works privately. They're behind closed doors, they work in secret. The Ethics Commission treats us equal to their investigative department. We are discovery in the public view. They do discovery in secret, okay, confidentially. So they will run ROD through their discovery department to quote-unquote double-check it. And that was a big issue for us. We were like, no, the ordinance says that you should, take it and apply it. We've already done the discovery. You don't need to have your department do it. And so it became a little bit of, kind of kingsmanship in that. So we haven't done it yet. We might, if something is serious enough, it'll be an interesting test case to see how it might work. So that's how that works. So anyway, getting back to your original question, San Franciscans for Sunshine, who is basically almost all the chairs going back to the beginning, and some other members of the Sunshine Task Force, who have basically been rewriting a revision to the Sunshine Ordinance, turn it into a commission that would have its own enforcement power, would have its own staff, would have its own lawyers, that kind of thing, and make it as, fairly independent as possible. But it has to go to the voters, and it's a big deal. And it's been difficult. I've been, communicating with them for a long time, have gotten up to 3 supervisors to support it, but not a 4th to get put on the ballot. So that means you have to go collect signatures.
Who are the 3?
At the time, it was, I think, yeah, they aren't. I can't remember. It was a couple of years ago.
You need 6 to put it on the ballot anyway, right?
4 to review it, and then it's a vote of the supervisor.
Oh.
Right. But, for me personally, I'm of the mind that it should be a signature collection, the way it was the first time. Because then this is a body of law that's supposed to oversee a whole government. So, if government wants to impose law on itself, great. But they should be very upfront about that that's what they want to do, and be unanimous about it. There should be no question. The fact that there is some, whatever question on their part, or there is some resistance to do it, leaves a lot of questions. So my sense, but personally, I think it should be, if the people if they think strongly about transparency in government, we're in a place right now where it gets discussed every single day, almost every hour of the day on, mainstream news media. No less all the other media and alternative media that's out there. People feel very strongly about it. Granted, we're not dealing with the kind of headline secrecy that's going on in Washington, but there's enough folks out there that, having difficult times getting certain kinds of documents and whatnot. So I think, people are interested in it, they should step up and sign, and it should not be it shouldn't be too heavy of a lift, except for the time frame that it takes to do that. So that's kind of where we're at, where things are at with the amendments. And they are available on the San Francisco for Sunshine website. You can read them, and I don't know if it's a red line version, but it probably is up there. I'm not sure. So let's begin, so to speak. We want to talk a little bit about the ordinance itself. We want to talk about we want to go through our bylaws. We want to go through our complaint procedure and any other policies that we have. We have an attendance policy, things like that, and I'll take some notes. You guys take some notes. If there's something that seems like a good idea that we should be doing, we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting. and/or we'll send it to I'll send it to the Rules Committee first to have, more formal discussion about it. But for today, we just want to give you an orientation because we have a lot of new members that have never been on the task force before, and I think it's always a good idea to, be on the same page as far as procedure and how things work. If we're going to run by Robert's rules, somebody should have a bit of an acumen for that. We should have a little discussion about, weapon versus tool, or, how deep are we going to get into Robert's rules, things like that. And I'm always up for the challenge, having been a parliamentarian for many years. So there's that. So I've handed out some copies of just a cheat sheet for Robert's rules. So why don't we start with that, because that basically runs our meeting, and it's fairly simple to go through. Everybody knows we start out with, when we come to a motion, we ask for a maker of the motion, we ask for a second. If there is no second, the motion will die. I usually will count to about 10 if I don't hear somebody making a second. So there's that. If you look on this front page, there are two grids. The top grid is in order of privilege, okay? Which means that a motion to adjourn takes priority over everything else that is happening in the meeting. So if we start the meeting at 4 o'clock and at 4:01 somebody says I move to adjourn, that takes precedent over everything, the rest of the meeting, okay? So usually most people would not second it, and probably most people would probably not vote against it even if there was a second. But I could be wrong.
Depends on what time it is.
Right, well, yeah. I'm saying if I started the meeting at 4 and at 4:01 somebody said that. So, and so on and so forth. So recess is the next order in priority. Appointed privilege. So let's say the air conditioning turned on, and all of a sudden the temperature in the room dropped, 10 degrees, and it got really cold. It's not unheard of in that room, especially somewhere around 8:30. And so that's all I'll say. Appointed privilege or appointed personal privilege is that in that kind of way too. It usually doesn't, like if you need to go to the bathroom, that's not appointed personal privilege usually. It's usually for something that is happening to everything that's going on in the room, that kind of thing.
Question.
Yeah.
If you are exactly at quorum and you need to go to the bathroom, does that become a point of privilege then?
Well, it's interesting because no, because I'll tell you why. Will you lose quorum?
Like, it's either a point of privilege or you have to move for a recess because
Right.
you can't continue onwards.
That's
I'm
right.
trying to figure out which of those
Right,
two
you can't continue with the meeting unless a quorum is present, and the quorum has to be 6.
Well, in the past, we just stopped the meeting.
Yeah.
Oh.
So if we are down that low to 6, and somebody had to leave, we have to adjourn.
Right, I understand the process. The
Yeah.
question is whether it's
What would
a
you
point
use?
of privilege or a move to recess.
No, it would probably be it would have to be recess, because you have to stop the meeting.
Right, okay.
Okay, privilege doesn't require the meeting to stop. You're
Right.
still in session, okay? But if you're gonna lose quorum, then you have to stop the meeting anyway. So, there's that. So the next one is to end the debate and vote on the question. So we're now in debate. We've been going around and around for 15, 20 minutes. Doesn't seem like there's anything real. Everybody's repeating themselves. Somebody could say, "I call a question," and then I'll immediately recognize it. And if I say no, I think there should be more. Okay, then there's another motion. and it is the very last one on the page. Vote on the chair's decision to appeal the decision of the chair. So if I refuse to recognize somebody or to somebody's motion or some kind of thing, then you'd vote against it. You vote to appeal, to override it, whatever I did. And then I would either obey it or you would run me out of the room. So back to the top, you can table the matter. So know the difference between tabling and postponing. You table the matter, tabling the matter is for the same meeting. You're postponing something in the same meeting. If you table it and then you don't take it up from the table by the end of the meeting, it dies. That item or that, like we're in the middle of debate, somebody says, we've got other things to do, let's come back, let's come back at 7 o'clock and we'll take this matter up at 7 o'clock, or maybe one of the parties had to leave or something like that, then you would table the matter, you would bring it up later. If you were to postpone it, then you could, generally postponing it is for a future date. Okay? Please do not use postpone indefinitely. That is using Robert's rules as a weapon. If you postpone something indefinitely, then it can never be brought to the floor. That's the way to kill a bill. And it's usually used for inexperienced folks, and I don't know why it's in there, but I don't know why it's allowed, but generally postponing a matter is, for a future date. We usually use the word continuing, like want to continue the matter, same difference. Amending a motion, do you have a question? Okay. Amending a motion, we've done that several times, everybody knows what that is. And then the lowest on the priority list is to move a matter. Okay, so that's basically how things work. The bottom grid is not in any order. You can make those motions at will at any time. And it tells you if you go across to the right, somebody who is already speaking that has the floor, can they be interrupted or not? Is a second needed? Is the motion debatable or not? Is it amendable? And who decides? Okay? So this is a good little cheat sheet. It helps keep things understandable so that people who don't know Robert's rules, even though your common sense or your intuition says, wait, that's not right, but Robert's rules is its own rules, right? So on the following pages are just explanations, okay? That give you a little more narrative on what each of these are. So, keep this with you, whatever, practice, what have you, yeah.
I have a question. So I noticed other people doing something, so I just started doing it, and I have no reason why.
Yeah.
Some people will say they want to do something through the chair. What does that mean, and when are you supposed to use it? Is that just a...
So if you wanted to ask during a meeting, if you wanted to ask a question of staff or of legal counsel, you usually ask through the chair. The chair will then allow that discussion to happen.
Okay.
Keeps some order, keeps things kind of orderly. The chair is the facilitator. So even when you are speaking to the chair, okay? And then that serves a couple of purposes. One, it keeps all the focus of the discussion in one direction. The other thing it does is it keeps folks from making direct comments to other people. Your comments, your discussion should be about the topic and not about other people. Now, every now and again, somebody might say, well, I know member so-and-so would not agree with me on this. Well, that actually, under Robert's rules, is considered an attack. Okay, and then I would probably say, that person could say, oh, I call for decorum. So that's kind of like more deeper into Robert's rules. So when things start to get a little more personal or disorderly or something, somebody can just say decorum, and then I will just rap the gavel and say, I'll call the meeting to order, and I can get, we end up being like in the House of Commons, everybody's yelling and screaming at each other, when the chair is trying to, overcome the masses of voices, but generally, that's kind of the way it works.
So specifically, when talking to staff or council, it's through the chair?
Through the chair.
Or if we're questioning somebody who's,
No, you just need to be, if that person is there to address the body,
Yeah.
everybody has an opportunity to address them directly, you just ask to be recognized, that's all. So if you want to if you want to ask a question of another member of the task force, also through the chair. The chair will say, you know what, we're kind of running late, I don't think so. But I really need to, no, I'm sorry, we're going to keep moving. Well, then I move to appeal the decision of the chair. And then you can overrule me. And then if I'm overruled, then you can have your question. You can have your discussion.
If the complainant is the one at the
Podium?
podium, thank you, nobody seems to have any questions for the complainant, you have a question for the respondent, is that through the chair?
No, you can just, we always do this, so you can just say, I have a question for the respondent, can the respondent come forward?
Oh,
Just be
okay.
recognized. All I do is I recognize you, you have the floor. So you choose how you want to use the just be within
Except for
the...
staff and council.
Except for staff and council. If you have a question, staff and council, the idea is we're kind of stopping the meeting to address more procedural matters that are maybe not pertain to the merits of what we're doing. So if we're going to take a sidebar because we need to check on something with staff or with legal counsel, that's kind of what it is. And they generally don't just, or can't participate. This is our meeting, so this is what we do. So if they have a question or they need to make a correction, they'll get my attention, and then I will stop things going, then I'll recognize them. But that's through the chair. They communicate, whoever the chair is, whether it's a committee chair or whether it's the full task force, whoever's chairing the full task force, it's always staff and is always through the chair to the rest of the body. So it's kind of like they ask permission. Everybody's asking for permission to speak. We just call it, being recognized. So just to be polite.
Yeah, I just didn't know that swapping out witnesses didn't also need to go.
No, we do, because we do that all the time.
Well, I know we do it all the time,
Yeah.
I just wasn't sure what
Yeah, no,
you said.
once we're in the throes of the question and answer period, the clarification period, after they make their initial testimony, their initial presentation, then it's kind of open. Because that's that part of the complaint procedure, where it's just we're just asking questions, getting clarifications and whatnot. And we'll go through the complaint procedure a little bit, because I want to tighten up a certain area in that we tend to we tend to slingshot back into another part, and I want to see if we can tighten that up a little bit, just to kind of save us some time during the procedure there. Anything more for Robert's rules? Yeah.
Well, just one quick, less about the rules and more about the little narrative.
Yeah.
Did you get this from the city?
No.
Okay.
I actually,
There's something on page 4 that
what does it say?
to somebody on the committee of the whole. Here's how to avoid, keep out visitors in the press.
Oh, yeah.
Just wanted to make sure that wasn't.
Yeah, no, I got this from a university. Yeah,
You need something, you need to discuss something controversial and you want to keep out the public.
yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
Just want to make that clear in case.
Yeah,
Someone ever connects the audio.
Yeah, as far as committee of the whole, we've never really used it, but it's kind of like if we were on something time certain and we needed to have something discussed at a committee like that pertained to committee, or let's say the committee could not meet, but there's stuff that's timely, and the next meeting that everybody will be there will be at a full task force meeting. We can have a section, we can agendize committee of the whole task force becomes that committee. you can do that, think of it that way. But there are a couple of different ways to do committee of the whole.
Would that really apply? I mean, I guess,
It would, because if we didn't want to take official action, but we just wanted to have something within the confines of that committee so that the committee could continue its work on that item without it being absconded from them. So they'll have some discussion that was necessary at this particular period of time. The body, we could also say, we're going to recess for 15 minutes, and the complaint committee will commence between 6:15 and 6:30. And then the rest of us will either sit in the audience or we'll go out and have a cup of coffee or what have you, and while they have their meeting. And then the task force will reconvene at 6:30. So you can do it that way too. Sometimes it's easier and faster without musical chairs to just do a committee of the whole, in that kind of way. The Board of Supervisors does a committee of the whole. I'm not quite sure why they do it.
a lot, actually.
Yeah, I don't know for what reason. And so, we've never had a need to use it. And in all the years I've been involved, nobody's ever exercised it. So, in that kind of way. There is a Robert's Rules book here if you want to research it. You're more than welcome. Okay. There's also the internet, so in that kind of way. All right, so let's move on. I want to go through, do we have it in here? Is the ordinance in there? Okay, good. So in your packets, I'm not going to run through the whole, the whole sunshine ordinance. But if you open up to the first page, let's be page 2, and you look at the top, just so you know, there are 4 sections of the sunshine ordinance. There is the general findings and purpose, okay, which describes kind of the preamble of what this thing is all about. There is Section 2, which is public access to meeting, of what as we know, is the Ralph M. Brown Act, the Open Meetings Act. 3 is public information, public records, which is what we know as the California Public Records Act. And then 4 is how we operate, things that pertain to us. But in each of these sections, both the California Public Records Act and the Brown Act allow for local agencies, City and County of San Francisco is a local agency, to enhance both those laws in any way that would provide more transparency and more expediency, more efficiency, okay? And that is why the Sunshine Ordinance got created. Now, one of the big differences is in Article 3, Section 3, is that the California Public Records Act focuses on agencies. It doesn't focus on particular people or be a little more pointed or direct to sub-departments or subdivisions of agencies per se. If a subdivision of an agency violated the California Public Records Act, the whole agency is in violation under the Public Records Act. The Sunshine Ordinance brings it down to the actual person, the actual custodian, the person who actually holds the record in whatever format it is, hard copy, paper, in their head, over email, some recording, whatever medium it's on. The record lives on a medium somewhere, okay? So there's, some people come into our meetings and they will say, we didn't have it in hard copy, we only had it in an email. Well, then print it out. It's the record is the content that is I don't know what the word for it. You have ink on a page that are all these squiggly lines that is part of we call our alphabet, and somehow we're able to interpret it as something. it's a kind of a virtual thing about that, you know? It's not about what it's, you know, what the medium that it's on, per se. But the information that is on a medium is disclosable. And it can be verbal, too. There's a section that talks about verbal, providing verbal information. So I just want, you know, folks to be clear about that, so when, you know, people start trying to, either through their own common sense, because they're not educated around it in this way, or they are actually trying to pull, you know, one over on us to try and confuse us. The idea is, let's not be confused, okay? And so let's try in this room, try to clear up whatever questions people have with regards to that. I think, you know, one of the big things about the Sunshine Ordinance is that it's really the people's law. It's kind of reversed from a lot of other things. Most laws are more restrictions on people and provides allowances for people, but it doesn't provide for the people to have the power to do something over government. And that's what's so important about this law. It requires that all business be done in a public, some way, shape, or form, in a public setting. All policies that are created should be done in the view of the public, and nothing should be done in secret, so to speak. I think the preamble of the Brown Act is a lot better than what we have here, but there, you know, paragraph D. Well, actually, paragraph C. Although California has a long tradition of laws designed to protect the public's access and workings of government, every generation of governmental leaders include officials who feel more comfortable conducting public business away from the scrutiny of those who elect and employ them. You know, can be a pretty damning statement to put on somebody who violates the Sunshine Ordinance. You know, and so, you know, that's not implied. So we talk, you know, there's the fundamental to democracy. You know, there's all these kinds of statements, and that's really where we come from when we do our work. So, and if we put ourselves in the position, if we were truly the best Congress that we would have liked to see today, and we have this president, you know, this kind of president, you know, I would hope that we would all be, you know, fierce, you know, to this law, to make sure that it, you know, there's a level of transparency that our people who elect us into office would be expected, they would expect from us. So I think that's really important, and it's good. Sometimes we'll go down some discussions and it will veer off from. It may seem like, well, what seems reasonable to us may not be deemed transparent. We may inadvertently be creating something that's not transparent. And it can be very nuanced. So I think it's important. And I'll be honest with you, some members of the public have enlightened us at times to such things, where we're kind of somehow through our discussions, we get tunnel vision. And now we're going down this one narrow path, and they will bring something, hey, wait a minute, you need to be thinking about this also, and it throws a curveball on us a little bit from left field, and so then we're like, okay, you know, then we'll have to see how that fits in or not. So at times, that could extend a discussion, you know, quite a bit. If it does, and we feel that it becomes a little bit too complicated, or we're not ready to, you know, I might say, is everybody, just a straw poll, does everybody feel like they can come to some conclusion? No, I need to sleep on this a little bit. Okay, you know, do you think we should, I'll ask the question, do you think we should continue this item? You know, somebody may say, yeah, I move to continue. Okay, so I'll try to facilitate things that way.
What about the practice that we're not allowed to respond to public comment?
So responding to public comment. So you can respond to public comment if you want, but there's no back and forth. But there's no discussion between the public and you during public comment. If you want to make a statement, if somebody said something and you're like, that is absolutely wrong, we don't really, you could just say, Mr. Chair, for the record, we've never done that. And that just becomes put on the record. But you're not speaking to that person, you're speaking to the chair. Okay? Because even though that person is addressing the body, they're really addressing the chair. Okay? Because essentially, if we didn't have like a clock running, it would be me telling them, you need to stop, or you need to go, or if you're making direct attacks, that is not allowed, it's not, generally it's the chair's job to facilitate that part, okay? And so, it's that kind of thing. But if you feel that there's something that's inflammatory, or that's so like way off out of bounds, and we should discuss what those parameters might be, if you feel that it's appropriate. In many iterations of Sunshine Task Force, people have felt public comment because of the work that we do. This is their time to say whatever the hell they want. And the Board of Supervisors basically do the same in a lot of ways. But I've seen in recent years, more and more chairs will not allow certain kinds of comment. But, the question is you're there to kind of do the work of the people. If they don't like what you're doing, grit and bear it. They only got 3 minutes. Then they'll stop talking. Right? And I'm saying that, somewhat to be flip, but, sometimes there are people who are just trying to be mean, and even though it may seem uncomfortable, you can leave. If it's too much, just get up and walk out of the room. There's no requirement for you to sit in your chair through the whole meeting either, so.
Bruce, did I hear you say that members of the public, during public comment, cannot make direct reference to board members, just the board as a whole?
They should not. I mean, the thing is if we have, the task force in its history has not limited or restricted public comment in any way.
My second question is, does the board of supervisors permit that? But I don't think they do, from what I've seen.
They don't allow direct attacks.
They'll cut the mic right there.
Right, and they have a rule about that. No direct attacks from the public, no direct attacks between each item. So they try to, everything's got to stay on topic. And you can, in Robert's rules, the chair can, and I think members of the body can interrupt a public commenter, if not during general public comment, but public comment on an item, if they are not speaking pertinent.
I'm saying point of order.
Right.
I've seen chairs interrupt people.
Yes. And, there is section of the ordinance that talks about interruptions, that they should not be interrupted, but that would be the only occasion. Not generally through general public comment, unless it's really getting really nasty, down and dirty. But, and even then, people can say, we'll allow it, because that's the person's only 3 minutes on that day until the next month to address the body. It's 3 minutes out of how many minutes until the next month that they get to speak before the body. Okay, so 3 minutes. Let them have their 3 minutes.
I was going to say, on the other side of the coin is the fact that we are kind of people's dais, and if we don't allow it, so I think we've always allowed more than not allowed.
Right.
Regardless of what the board of supervisors.
But on action items, on specific cases or at specific items of discussion that have actual topics, public comment must be pertinent. And it's the only time that will, because otherwise it's a waste of everybody's time. And, sometimes you get folks that, have something else to say, and they just will choose any public comment period to go up and speak about it. And so you have to remind them, this is not on topic. There was an opportunity at 5 o'clock to have public comment. Please come back next month.
I'd say on the whole, the last couple of years has been much more civilized than when I started 7 years ago. It was
All those people haven't been showing up.
Yeah.
So we had all sorts of people that were very angry at us, and they were all like freshman class. We got it every time. And not that we need it anymore, but one of the things that might be useful for a chair or someone chairing a subcommittee is to have control of the microphone. I don't think we have that, where we can cut the mic. When the time's up.
That happens, does that happen automatically? No, we don't.
I do it by hand.
You do it by hand, okay.
The board of supervisor automatically cuts off everybody at 2 minutes. However, the SOTF has
2 minutes.
had we cut it off automatically. For all committees, boards, just so there's no argument. But the task force has been a lot more lenient, and I leave it up to the chair to cut them off.
All right. It's hard to get your attention with them talking through to say, cut it, I mean, just give you the hand signal. We've done it a few times, but
Well, the thing is, if you do it for one person, you have to do it for everybody.
Yeah.
Exactly the same way.
Generally, people go over, they generally are trying to finish up a point.
no, that's okay.
That's-
But someone that's already off point, has already,
Yeah, it's happened before. People have gone, really have gone off and have just really just tried to disrupt the meeting, just shut off the mic.
What's the, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you don't have to read, just speak up. Just
This would,
not doing Robert's
it
rules.
sounds like it probably happened back in the day, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. And this may be one of the reasons why sometimes it's better to just let people go, but occasionally, it's not hard to imagine a scenario where someone starts going off a little bit too far, starts getting a little too agitated, and then what?
So,
What are the, I guess, I hate to say safety, because that keeps.
the best way to safety, stop the meeting. So just call for recess.
I mean, is there?
And just so you know, we are monitored by the sheriffs, by video, and we have an emergency button on our desk.
Okay.
oh,
I mean,
And then
probably never ever
some
should be
share.
used.
Yeah,
Well, they told us how to use it.
they use it anytime they feel uncomfortable.
Right.
Yeah. And they see certain people come, it's sometimes a little odd for me, because knowing who people are, that
Right.
the sheriff automatically shows up, it's like, but this person is never like that. There are other people I wish they would have showed up for, but, there's certain people that show up for, I'm not quite
So it's
understanding.
monitored in that
Yeah.
way. But even if you're just without a button or anything, and you say, because this is getting out of hand, if you
You
try
may not be
over and over
listening,
again.
they are watching, so if you want it, just signal us and we will
And we'll
get
see,
them up.
we'll hit the button.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's so many scenarios where that can actually make everything worse, but just to know, like, in those,
Yeah.
hopefully never happen situations.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I would just urge you to watch that Ethics Commission meeting on the Mercury thing. It's just a very interesting state of affairs, the whole thing, and what happened, the bomb scare, all kinds of strange stuff. It is really odd, so yes, that there could be a situation where you don't know what's happening or why they're there for whatever reason. And it could be for, they have their own experience of folks, but when they're in our universe, they're not like that.
Right.
So we don't have an experience of that, but they may have an experience of them somewhere else, so it's, it is what it is, I generally try not to question why they're there. I generally don't like harassment either. I don't like just the presence of law enforcement to cause somebody to feel so uncomfortable that they cannot perform. They can't do their case, for whatever reason. But, it could be also, it's been that one party or the other may have a restraining order against them. And this is a place where they have to be together, and we haven't been asked to have testimony be done independently. One person stays outside, and they switch, that kind of thing. We haven't had that yet. But we have had parties that have had TROs against each other, so.
Is the sheriff always here even if we meet like late at night?
They're here 24.
Yeah,
Here all the time.
they're here all the time.
All the time.
Yeah, they're always here. Okay, so, good discussion. So, is there any part of the ordinance that you are interested in having some discussion, have any questions about? Let me do it that way, because there's one section that I want to cover that created some consternation among members last year. So, yeah.
I have a question, and it's possible that in skimming through this that I missed it, but when we talk about public information and public records, and, the requiring to give like the potential charges for pages and things like that, what if people are requesting a whole database? Technically, that's, if you
Right.
came in with your own drive and asked the city to transfer it, so they're not actually giving you any equipment, but how does something like that work?
Right, so there is a section in here with regards to, it's not only the cost, so 6721A. So every person having a custody of any public record or public information is defined herein referred to as custodian of public record shall at normal times and during normal reasonable hours of operation without unreasonable delay and without requiring an appointment, permit the public record or any segregable portion of a record to be inspected and examined by any person, and shall furnish one copy thereof upon payment of reasonable copying charge, not to exceed the lesser of the actual cost or 10 cents per page. Okay? There is another section on having to produce documents that don't already exist, but information that would need to be like collated in order to create a new document.
Let me put it this way, what is, when you say a document versus a database, a record, or a,
So let's just call them records, okay?
Okay.
So, if the record doesn't exist in a format that can be readily produced, so for instance, if it is a database, the database kind of lives in a dynamic virtual world. What you can do is you can ask to inspect it. Make an appointment, you go in, they sit you in front of a monitor, or a big flat, whatever, and they show you what the information is. Nowadays, they put a lot of stuff up online, so you want to look at information from the building department. You want building permits and stuff. You can just do it that way, okay? But let's say it's a database and you wanted certain information out of that database. For instance, let's talk about, you can take the Patrick Roddy cases. Okay, Patrick Roddy wants a list of all these dead people. Okay, he doesn't want their names. He just wants to know how many there are. So that means somebody has to go in and do a specific kind of query to create a certain kind of result that can be printed out in, Mr. Roddy, which way do you want it printed out? How do you want it? Do you want it in portrait or landscape? Do you want it in spreadsheet format, or do you want it in a CSV file on your thumb drive, or what have you? It's that kind of thing is not required by the city to do.
and that's why they can charge if they say, we're gonna do this work.
They don't even have to charge, they can just say it's creating a new day. What they can charge, they can charge you for full labor to do it at that point. Now, the assessor's office used to charge tons of money for the map of the parcels of the city. It's really, really expensive because they had to spend all these, GIS guys to create the maps early on. This was like in the 90s. And it was really super expensive. But meanwhile, you had this humongous database of the master voter file. That cost 10 cents, it's like $1, okay, come election time. And it's even bigger, because it's every single person, it's like, over 600,000 people and horizontal fields going like way off the page, okay? So it came to pass that they were violating the California Public Records Act. They could not charge more than the cost of the medium, because the people were already paying for the work. They were paying people to do that work, to create all those parcels. You can't charge the people additional, it's double dipping, okay? They couldn't do that. And so it became a question of, what are you doing with this extra money? You got all this money from your budget to do this work, and now you're asking the public to pay for this. Where's that money going? Okay, that's a great whistleblower case, right then and there. So that's kind of how that works. I don't remember where it is in here, but if you read in this section, it's,
Did you already look at 6728?
oh, is it 6728?
Yeah, that was the one I came
It
across
doesn't really
first.
get
It
to,
doesn't say anything about
it doesn't really
databases.
get to the database.
Yeah, 67, also 6721L, inspection and copying of documentary public information stored in electronic form shall be made available to a person requesting the information any form requested which is available or easily generated by the department, its officers, employees, including disc, tape, printout, or monitor, at a charge no greater than the cost of the media in which it is duplicated. Like the master voter file, right? Again, and the sentence right after that, inspection of documentary public information on a computer monitor need not be allowed where the information sought is necessarily and inseparably intertwined with information not subject to disclosure. So like investigatory stuff. So that's why like Mr. Roddy couldn't get access to look at that database because there's people's names on it. There'd be no way to redact those
No,
names.
that's not the reason, it's because of the state prohibition.
No, I know that, but if there was some other department that was not tied to that state system that had those records,
Oh, if
they
some other
may be,
department wasn't governed by the state law, sure.
they may be under certain rules or regulations that they can't disclose actual names, but because it's on some computer monitor, there's no way to redact the names. So he wouldn't be able to see it anyway. So that's what this section is talking about. Then the last sentence is this is the one I was talking about. Nothing in this section shall require a department to program or reprogram a computer to respond to a request for information or to release information where the release of that information would violate a licensing agreement. Actually, it's not the section. There's another section in here that talks about not creating customized documents, that kind of stuff.
The state,
remember what it is.
so like the CPRA,
Is it 6728? Is that really where
that's the ordinance provision that talks
Okay.
about fees for duplication.
Right.
The CPRA talks about if you've got an identifiable public record not exempt from disclosure, and it's in an electronic format, they've got to give that over, as we all know. Then or in any other format that they hold it electronically. And you've got the cost of duplication shall be limited to, whatever this means, the direct cost of producing a copy of a record in electronic format. But I mean,
So if you had a Gutenberg press, you'd have to charge for all the labor that
it
takes to
doesn't,
put
so
it
if
up.
you've got an extensive database that's,
So it may,
whatever terabytes are, that is the word I don't know about that. I don't know, a lot of.
so if it took an hour to compile an output of like some weird query or whatever is going on, I guess they can charge for the,
But see, that's the cost, but the cost of doing that though is, I mean, they're not shoveling the information, right? They click a couple of buttons and it should, hopefully,
right?
not do much more work than that, but I'm also getting out of my wheelhouse.
This is like 20 years ago when copies were expensive.
Yeah,
So that's, we don't come across that.
So Lila, what do you
Right.
on page 22 at the time, I mean,
They
it,
never use that.
saying a charge no greater than the cost
Cost of the media. Right.
which is duplicated.
That's right.
But, yeah.
But, and that's, the thing is the sunshine, the question then becomes, and we've been challenged on it several times, which ones takes precedent? California Public Records Act or the Sunshine
Well, it
Ordinance?
sounds like they're consistent, because it just says whatever the cost of reproducing it in that
Right.
format is. And
Right. Well, most of what you see in the Sunshine Ordinance is almost word for word. There's very few things. The litmus for it is, does the ordinance create more transparency and expediency? That, do you get the information faster, and does it create more transparency, more sunshine? That is the thing, because the purpose of the ordinance is to enhance the state law, okay? And that's exactly what it's trying to do. Okay, any other questions on this item? Okay. So there are a couple of areas I wanted to touch base on. I'm going to go a little backwards. If you go to page 29, which is in 6729, this has been this is kind of what creates a lot of problems, I believe, that causes a lot of complaints, is that departments and agencies and offices do not put enough information that could be available to the general public at any time up on their website. And that's what the index to records is. And it's usually managed by the city administrator. And they would review like all the websites or a binder. Before there was the internet, they could review a binder. And there would be like, this would be a place where it could be, just as it says, an index to records. Like, where can I find this record in your universe, your environment of 2 million records? How do I find it? Because that is a great way. If a department or a person did not want somebody to have a piece of paper, a piece of record, it's a great way to bury it. Not have any way to navigate it. Imagine that a library operating that way. Okay, it goes against every principle. So this is a really important section, because it's very easy now. The city has adopted the SharePoint system. This is a Microsoft product. And basically, you can, and if they haven't programmed it, you have the ability to be able to just basically tell a document where it should live. And because of the way it's designed, if it was designed in this particular way, you can have it drive that to a website or to a web, something you can see on a computer, okay, that is located on a website, or a link can be sent so that you can see that, okay? And so the more information that can be pushed to their website in that kind of way in this section, okay, the better. And, the question then becomes, does the department have some ulterior motive to prevent certain information from being seen at any particular point in time? There's no requirement when it should be up there, except if it was has to do with a public meeting, and there are rules around that, or if there's a certain law that says this particular document must be posted within a certain period of time. But this is a project. This is a project for one or more of us to engage the city administrator to find out how this is working, and maybe even call upon them to give a report on how this is working. This is part of the sunshine law. It doesn't exist anywhere else. Yeah.
I would say this might be a good agenda item for the technology subcommittee.
Could be, sure.
I think we actually had, who was it? Myself. I think, I'm not sure who I heard was, but we had, what's your name? Carrie Bishop from the SF Digital present to us.
Right.
There's a lot of good work being done about where the city's going, and getting that really could go lockstep with something like
absolutely.
this. And she probably already is doing this unbeknownst in some shape or form, but I'd love to have them or the city administrator, whoever that person is. Is that now her? No.
Carrie?
Who is?
She's digital inclusion. But yeah, she basically works on what the content is, how it looks on the page, and to make sure everything's there. Yeah, she would actually be a good person to do that, and not Department of Technology. It's not the right department. I would urge you to read this section on your own and digest it, because it is one of the better written and better described. It's like really instructive on what it means. Things like the index shall clearly and encourage public participation to develop a meaningful records index. Encourage public participation. Okay? The index shall clearly and meaningfully describe with as much specificity as practicable the individual types of records that are prepared or maintained by each department, agency, commissioner, public official in the city and county. You can't get more specific. That is not implied. That is explicit.
That's pretty good since 20 years ago, especially looking at how they work with.
That's right. And it's written in such a way, in general way, that it applies no matter what medium exists out there. If it's telepathy, it will still apply, right? You get wires plugged into your head, it applies, okay? It's the way it works. So I think this actually could transform transparency in our city if the city wants to make a commitment to doing that. And many websites have a section called the Index of Records, but it's empty. There's nothing there. They just have it there because the city administrator said, you got to put this up on your website, but you got to maintain it. You got to do something with it. So people can be brought before us in violation of 6729 for not having it and wasting the public's time. And it, in turn, wastes the city's time. So whenever anybody says that Sunshine's costing the city a lot of money, 6729. Bring that up to them first, okay? Because most of our complaints, 6721. Not timely, can't find them, unresponsive, so on, so on, so on. Unresponsive, very easy, without a good index of records, very easy way not to produce a document. Okay? All right. Let's go back to 6721. Now, that's on page 20. I have a particular interpretation of this. And that interpretation is what has been, the way it was taught to me, and the way it has been in practice since I came on the task force in 2005. That it is, in the Latin term, et sequitur, in sequence. It starts at A, and then goes to B, which is like step 2, step C, step D, and it goes down the line. It's a progression. That's the way I determined it. Last year, we had some interesting debate where there was a discussion that the actual person who had the record, had to produce it and be applied in this way. The counter discussion was, it doesn't matter. The agency just, as long as the person got the information, that's all that matters. And it doesn't matter if it was not timely at that point. The fact that they got it at all was sufficient. And it left us somewhat in a stalemate. And so this is an important factor, because if anybody believes that the ordinance, if is written otherwise, then procedurally we should, I'll put it on the agenda so we can have a public debate about it. And we will get experts to come in and all that. But it's always been held in all my years of being in the task force, and from everybody else as far as the Sunshine advocacy is concerned, they all believe that it's et sequitur, it's in sequence. Okay? And also, this section is what separates the Sunshine Ordinance from the California Public Records Act. There's nothing in, pretty much nothing in 6721 that you'll find in the CPRA, because it is focused on the person, not on the agency. So there are extra provisions in there that talk about what a person can or cannot do, or what they're required to do. And then it talks about the task force having a little bit of authority or enforcement, not enforcement, but authority to compel documents to be produced. It's just that we don't have that what if they don't in the ordinance, except 6734. But as I mentioned in the beginning, we now have this agreement with the Ethics Commission that we could just send a simple order of determination to them for a simple violation. Doesn't have to go all the way to willful failure. It's just that they just refuse. First time before us, and they said, absolutely will not give you that document. I have it, I know where it is, but I will not give it to you. And we say, but it's a public document, we all agree. We've already declared it being public, okay? And they refuse to do it, fine. We compel you to do it, send it to compliance and amendments. If they say still refuse to do it, compliance and amendments, recommends to the task force, we want this referred to the Ethics Commission for, not following 6721D.
You'll have one of these at your next meeting, but the recommendation was to refer, I believe, to one of the attorneys, district attorney or something of that nature.
Oh, that was Frank? I think Frank, yeah.
So you'll have one of those to decide on at your next
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, some folks that have not exercised the new, because we haven't exercised the new rules, we've decided not to use the Ethics Commission, and people wanted to go directly to the district attorney. We've done it, I think we've done it once since I've been around, and
They just end up sending it to the...
They send it to the Ethics Commission anyway, which is not really appropriate, so.
But now, can we not just, since we're doing things, since the Ethics Commission is doing things slightly more differently now, can we not just send that 6721D
To the Ethics Commission.
to CAC for enforcement?
First.
And at the same time, to ethics to say, by the way, this might hit your docket, we've got one more step ahead, and give them a heads up.
I don't think so. Yeah, they want to receive an order from us. Yeah, it's just like court proceedings,
But we've already made the order, haven't we? That's where we've ordered determination that...
Yeah, but we cannot refer it. Like, I could say, we're going to refer this to CAC for a compliance. We don't have a requirement that it goes to compliance.
It's pretty clear cut, we can just...
We could just say, somebody could say, no, I don't agree, I don't agree with the chair, I would like to, I move for it to go directly to the ethics. Boom.
But I don't think we'd want to send it to ethics while we're still going through the process,
No, I agree.
because it's still developing and they need a complete.
Right. No, I think it's going to be clear cut where the respondent is clearly not going to comply.
Right. Hey, we can ask them, hey, if we're going to send this, we're going to refer this to compliance amendments, will you produce it there? And if they say, well, I'll talk to legal counsel. So if they want to concede in some kind of way to at least possibly look into it, usually give them the benefit of the doubt. Send it to CAC. If they come back and they say, you know what, I changed my mind, I'm not doing that, Or I talked to the city attorney and they said, I don't have to do it. Okay, fine, great. CAC recommendation, send it to ethics. And then the Ethics Commission will put it through their discovery. And they're supposed to give as much weight to our determination as possible. It would have to be something that we absolutely overlooked or we misinterpreted. So, we have enough lawyers that are members of the task force. We have enough of us who have some experience in this too. For some time, we have our own sensibility about this thing, and how we as a people, members of the public, community, how we wish it to be in the best interest of the public. That's really where we stand. This is in the best interest of the public. So, in that kind of way.
To Joshua's point, we obviously want to send them stuff that's it's pretty black and white to things. But for instance, if the issue is pressing, it's a timeliness issue, the person needs this information because an election is happening or something's happening, and it's clear the respondent's not going to give it up, we can just...
Yeah, we could send it over to him and say, please expedite immediately, or something like that. Absolutely. So I want, also if you read through, if you read in section D of 6721D, if the custodian refuses, fails to comply, or incompletely complies with the request described in section B, the person making the request may petition the supervisor of records for determination of whether the record requested is public. A lot of people skip over that. They don't take advantage that there's one person that could actually make the decision for them. And that person is city attorney. And usually there is, one or two or three that are assigned to be the supervisor of records to take these inquiries on. And they could act, and essentially, the city attorney, it really has nothing to gain or lose by not interpreting, that the document is public or not.
We should be getting that report at our next meeting for the last 2 years.
Oh, great, good. So usually we get that report every year. And they will say how many that they've been inquired about, things like that. Because some people are more litigious than others, and they'll say, well, the city attorney should know exactly whether this is a public document or not, and not have to go through our rigmarole. So so that is something that people, don't use, that could help expedite much faster. I don't think I'm not sure if that's in the CPRA or not either. I think that is something unique to the Sunshine Ordinance. And then, if a person doesn't like what the response is from the supervisor of records, then they can petition the Sunshine Task Force. Okay? So that's why I said this is somewhat is a progression. Okay? And that way it gives people the opportunity to self-facilitate and try to get things expedited on their own faster without having to go through a big, long, tedious public process, and in that kind of way. And
one of the things that's on the docket for the technology subcommittee is to try to change up our landing page, our first, where you start. It might be great to either have this language or link to the city index of records, and the fact that you can use the city attorney to help you,
Yeah, I mean, you could just, put on there, we encourage you to engage the supervisor of records, the city attorney's office, before you file a complaint. Or before you engage the Sunshine office. And we could also ask staff to say, when somebody calls and says, I can't get this document from so-and-so, please try the supervisor of records first, see if you can get satisfaction out of them. And if you can't get satisfaction out of them, then come back to us.
They're going to love us for doing that, but...
It's their job. It's the law. They get paid for this. They get paid a hell of a lot more money than anybody sitting at this table, okay? To be honest with you. Even the people that are getting paid, they get paid far more than that. And, the other thing about this also is, engaging our own legal counsel. I will just say this, is that when I first came to the task force, things operated very differently. We had legal counsel every committee meeting, every meeting. So there was always the ability, especially complaints, because that's where a lot of issues came up. And it actually helped them write their memo for the task force, because they were experiencing the thing right on the fly. And they could, a little more informally catch us if we're kind of misinterpreting something. at that point, so that way we're not sending the whole misinterpretation up to the task force, that kind of way. So that was, and the memorandum that we used to get, it wasn't even a memorandum really. It was really truly advice. It wasn't just here's the background, here's some pertinent information, here's some questions you might want to ask. And you have to kind of glean from the questions whether that's the advice or not. But it's not really advice. And if we're going to have legal counsel, let's have it, right? So I'd like to, for that to be, people to think about that and what that means. And, this is not something that I don't know if it's something that our legal counsel can make a decision on. It may come from the city attorney himself. And we may have to send a memo to the city attorney and say, there's an ethical firewall here, and we require this work to be done. So we demand that you allow whoever you're assigning to our unit to operate, independently and provide us with, these necessary things. So I want you to think about that, because if you feel by reading the memorandum that you're really not getting, advice as a layperson, never mind the lawyers in the room, but as a layperson, if you realize, I can't get my head around what this supposed, and then you're going to have to ask your fellow members who are lawyers. This may not even be their area of law, and hopefully their education and logic and constitutional, that they remember from their classes or whatever, they will help them out, but, and help us out because they're sitting here, with us as colleagues. I just think it's important because it's one of the reasons why in 1 year that I went around to almost every department I could find that had somewhat independent counsel, and I had asked if we were to redirect money that was going to the city attorney for our services to them, would they lend us their legal counsel? Because they were independent, like the enterprise agencies, MTA, Human Services Agency, the airport, the Port Authority, the Public Utilities Commission, even the public defender. I went to Jeff Adachi. Jeff Adachi says, it's a very interesting idea. He says, normally I would comply, but what if I were to come before the task force? And one of my people, they would feel so, I'm like, but it's an ethical firewall. They would just be acting in the course of this particular, say, yeah, but we're getting the money and we have to, he felt like there was going to be this big financial conflict of interest. And I'm like, no, we're hiring somebody from your department to work for us. And he couldn't quite get his head around it. And I could probably approach him again. Maybe he'll think of something different. But we've been trying this for some time. Unfortunately, I believe that it can't be done. Because in 67, I think it's 6730, that provision for providing us with legal counsel has to come from the city attorney. So that would change under the amendments if they were to be passed by the voters. This is 6730.
Well, no, it just says that the city attorney shall serve as a legal
Right,
advisor.
or other appropriate city office. So that's what I was using at the time. So, that's, if somebody wants to, look into that, and you feel strongly that we should have a, different department as our legal counsel, or a different kind of, it come from a different universe. I mean, one of the problems that we have experienced in the past is city attorney will offer advice to people coming, respondents that are coming before the task force. Is there some conflict of interest then? They're supposed to be this ethical firewall. Is it truly operating appropriately or properly? So I put that out as a question, okay? Think about it. All right, those are kind of the main sections, the main things I wanted to to elucidate with regards to the ordinance itself. I urge you to read the ordinance all the way through, you know, bring it with you to the meetings, or whatnot, so you have something to refer to. You know, I know member Kate always brings his binder. He's very prepared on that. I always have it up on my laptop, well, you know, so I would urge you to do it that way too, so you can easily refer to it.
Compare binders, just have 11 binders that you can look with.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to everybody. Everybody has their laptop open too, so it's, you know, I could just announce at the beginning, okay, everybody have their ordinance up now? Everybody ready to go? You can do something like that, so. But there's lots of interesting other stuff in here that we never touch on, that other people have to abide by. There's areas around lobbying. There's all kinds around correspondence. You know, one of the other things we've run into problems with is retention of records. How long can our email be retained, you know, or should be retained? It's very highly controversial. The thing about calendars, Prop 59 calendars and all that stuff. It's, you know, that whole thing around, well, what about future items? Well, if it's in a current calendar and you're asking for the calendars for, you know, whatever, they could say, well, we haven't even filled that calendar in yet, it's blank. Well, okay, send me that. I want to see a blank calendar. That's all right, you know?
Technically, the chair of a meeting not telling the audience to silence their phones is a violation of the Sunshine Ordinance?
No, it is no, you,
No, it literally says the chair must, 67A1, the presiding officer, wait,
67A1?
67A1.
67A.
We're at the last page, page 36.
The stuff we never ever look at.
Prohibiting the use of cell phones, pagers, and similar sound-producing electronic devices at and during public meetings.
Oh, 67A.
Last sentence, a warning of the provisions of this section shall be printed on all meeting agendas and shall be explained at the beginning of each public meeting by the presiding officer. So technically, if
You've been in violation all this whole time. That's true. But, yeah, and there are chairs that will say that, or they will have the clerk say it on their behalf, you know, that kind of thing. It shall be explained, it doesn't say who explains it. So, yeah, it's okay. Well, thanks for reminding us, or reminding us all. Yeah, you're right, never have read that one sometime. And you know what, it's interesting though, this was added by ordinance in 2000. How did that get added to? Didn't go before the voters. The Board of Supervisors have made some adjustments. And some of those, and it's not even the Board of Supervisors, sometimes there's state law. And so the state law applies, okay, and then it just gets added in. So the question here is, this was added by the Board of Supervisors.
Well, it's a different chapter, I don't know, breakdown of so chapter 67 is the Sunshine Ordinance, and 67A is a different chapter.
Could be.
That is not the Sunshine Ordinance.
It could be.
But it's, I guess it was tucked in because it's close to, you know, because it has to do with meetings, public meetings.
Well, there are sections in the ordinance that talks about disruption of meetings.
Right.
Things like that. Noise makers and things like that, so.
But we might not actually hear a violation of 67A1 because it is,
I have no authority.
yeah, it's outside of the
Outside
Sunshine Ordinance.
jurisdiction.
Yeah, but we could be cited by somebody else for it.
Detained after.
Top of the page says, chapter 67, essentially, is Sunshine Ordinance, top of page 37, so the statement almost implies it is still part of it, if you want to be lawyerly.
Oh, well, it's true, it is.
But it does work both ways.
It's under. It's, yeah. Anyway, so are there, again, I'll ask again, just for the sake of asking, are there any other sections of the ordinance that you have specific questions or concerns about? areas that you may not understand that you would like to have elucidated?
I guess I have a question.
Yeah.
When it talks about the clerk of the board and mayor having a member, I mean, being new, I haven't seen obviously anyone from the mayor's office.
Right.
The
chief of staff, it is their intention to, but that was Sean Ellsburn, is the chief of staff at the mayor's office, just came in, and he indicated that the mayor intends to appoint one. I don't believe the clerk of the board has addressed the issue in quite a while.
Yeah.
When was the last time there was a mayoral?
It was in 2010, I think, or 2011. It was a fellow named Shepard, I can't remember his last name. It was during Willie Brown's, must have been earlier than that. So it was-
Way earlier than that.
Yeah, so it was Willie Brown's last year of office, he came in.
2003.
Yeah, Shepard, can't remember his name, but he was good. He got into it, there was no inkling that he was serving the mayor at all. You know, that was the interesting thing about it. But he did kind of speak from a kind of the government, kind of structure perspective. Like how this might affect government and try to, give us some perspective on it in that way. The clerk had, when she first became clerk, did come to a couple of meetings and sat on the dais, but didn't really participate. We haven't had anybody since. And generally, one or the other acts as her agents to report back. But it's really more about participation, the clerk, how should I say this? I want to say this in a very positive way. The clerk regards their work as being the vanguard of the implementation of the Sunshine Ordinance, because they are actively in meetings, collecting data, taking minutes, that kind of thing, and watching how things work. They're not necessarily parliamentarians, but they do actually participate in that way to assure that, people are doing certain things correctly or not. And that's for all the clerks that serve on those bodies. Now, there are a lot of commissions that are not staffed by the clerk, because they are executive branch commissions, or they're from other agencies, what we call enterprise agencies. They're like government nonprofits. And so they have a secretary, in that kind of way, like the Planning Commission has a secretary, and they have their own, they don't have staff from your office, right? Planning Commission, right? So, it's that kind of way. So they do their own thing. And, but they don't get called, but they had been at one time called upon us a lot. We had a lot of complaints with the Planning Commission. And there were a bunch of cases that came where they started the department, not the commission for Brown Act stuff, but they would turn IDRs automatically into regular requests, just by will of their own, because they didn't rise to the occasion of immediacy. How is that for them to determine? So they did that pro forma. They would just send out a pro forma to anybody who sent in an IDR. So we found them in violation. That the Rec and Park Department started doing the same thing. And some of these public information officers will get very strident, and will start doing those things to try and prevent the collection, people being able to get certain information, or to slow it down. And we've seen this a lot. And I will say it in that way because there were violations. And it was obvious through the discussion and testimony and the evidence that was being produced that's exactly was the intent. So, we have to, also, speaking of that, we also have to be a little careful about how we adjudicate. We're adjudicating the Sunshine Task Force, not people's intent. If their intent is to violate the Sunshine Ordinance, that's one thing. But if their intent is to do something else by using the Sunshine Ordinance, that's not in our jurisdiction. So sometimes you can get caught up in the interest of the issue, and then sometimes you got to take that step back and like, really, it's like, it's really bad what they did, but really under the ordinance, it's just plain Jane, whatever's violated or not violated. It's pretty terse in that kind of way. And, because, I enjoy getting into the, in the thick of it, all the details and stuff, and it's sometimes very interesting, but again, you can take that Patrick Roddy case, it's very interesting, but it's not about the information that he wants. It's about whether he's getting it or not, and whether it's being withheld, properly or not. All right, so let's move on. So we had a little presentation by Rick Nee. Is there anything you want to discuss about Prop B? Yeah.
What's the legal status of Prop B right now?
It's active, it's law. And so, the question is, I'm just wondering, if there's anybody that doesn't understand what it means or what they could or can't do, if we have concerns about it, do we want to have a unified message? I just think this is a good opportunity to have some general discussion about the implications on the work that we do, or on the ordinance itself that might affect the work that we do, or what we're currently doing.
I think the first thing that jumps off of that is, I think we state on our very first page, our landing page, any information you provide will be deemed public. This has always been our kind of procedures till now. This seems exactly the opposite of that. It seems like, looking at, section 16130E,
All right, well, let me explain what Prop B is first, so it's clear, okay? Prop B is not for every company in the city, every tech company collecting information. It's only for city contractors. And all it means is that whatever you're contracted for, if that's the information you get to collect, that's all you get to collect. You can't collect more information than what's in your contract, and you cannot share it. You cannot sell it or share it unless it's in the contract that you can do that. The other thing is the question always became, for a lot of us, is why did this have to be a charter amendment? This is something that the Board of Supervisors could have passed by simple ordinance at any time. Didn't need to be a charter amendment. And so what's interesting is that when you get to the principles, the section that talks about the principles, which is E, actually starts with E, that this is when considering the adoption of laws, regulations, policies, and practices. Okay, this isn't the part that is active. This is not actually law. This is like, these are just guidelines, okay? And the part that I believe was the key part was giving the city administrator the authority, the ultimate authority by charter was the intent of making this a charter amendment. Because then that cannot be challenged. But the thing is, the city administrator, it's one person, essentially. Okay? And that means that how those things get to operate do not necessarily need to come back to the legislative process. They get all managed somewhat in a vacuum with regards to privacy first. So I'm not so concerned about the privacy first part. I think the privacy first part I'm pretty, personally, I'm supportive of it, okay? I don't like how this was written. I think it was a bad strategy, tactic, whatever you want to call it, the way they went about it, as far as the way it's designed and is used. I think if they were really serious about it, they should have created some law and not create these guidelines or principles. Those should have been, that's where you start. This is the law, this is where you start. But I think there was pressure from the private sector not to do that. So I'm not so concerned about that. It is this, it's this, in this section I. Who put this together?
Copy.
This was Aaron Peskin and Lee Heck, his aide, Lee Heck.
Who used to be on the Sunshine Task Force, which makes the whole thing even weirder to wrap around.
And I've explained to you before that Rick, Nee, and I met with Lee, me being from the task force, Rick being from San Francisco for Sunshine. We talked over coffee with Lee to ask him, we were basically asking if he could get Aaron Peskin to take on the amendments. And, because we needed one more supervisor. And he said, well, we're working on some legislation. What if we put it inside, and we put the ability for the Board of Supervisors to get your amendments passed through legislation? And Rick and I looked at each other, we said, no way. We will not diminish the ordinance to a simple legislative process. It has to be held at a higher level, it has to be held to the voters, to amend it, to change it.
67A violation, Cheryl.
And so we told him, no, we don't want to do that. And then we end up with this. And the thing is that if you remember, oh no, you guys, some of you won't remember this. 2 years ago, Lee came out of the blue to discuss the behest for payment legislation. This is a big deal with the Ethics Commission, and he was going around, he was shopping around to lots of different commissions. Doesn't necessarily apply to us, actually, to tell you the truth, because we're not an official commission, and we're volunteers.
Still lost David Moss over it, though.
Yeah.
We did. And so he came, he got himself on the agenda, he engaged Victor and said, can you get me on the agenda I need to speak, and we went back and forth. Everybody who was on a board of directors or is an ED for a nonprofit got really nervous and afraid and that, and all. I mean, he was not shy. Why not this? When it directly talks about open meeting laws and public documents, just seemed a little odd. And the answer, when we questioned him about it, his response was, well, this went through a regular, legislative process. The meetings were publicly noticed. There are hundreds of items that come before the Board of Supervisors. And we don't expect anything having to do with us to come up on the Board of Supervisors without us knowing. And knowing about it. I mean, it didn't even get flat, it didn't even come up on our administrator's radar. I mean, that's how almost stealthy it was gotten through the process. And it got through the process, I think, in a matter of weeks. It was very, very quick. And so that was very problematic. And when we confronted him on that, it was uncomfortable for everybody in the room. Because it's like, maybe I made a mistake, or, well, hopefully we can fix that, or whatever. There's no fixing this. There's no fixing it. It's just passed by the voters now. There's no fixing it. You gotta put it back to the voters.
Well, I mean, it's passed by the voters, but nothing's actually become unwound because of it yet.
Not yet.
But I'm not trying to say that everything's hunky-dory. I'm just trying to acknowledge that, we do have the opportunity to address it, and it seems like the most likely time that something could come about is between now and May 31st, 2009, with the ordinance that's going to be presented by the city administrator that could also deal with sunshine issues.
Could be. I don't know. Could be. But, the point is that, do we want to make a statement about it before that happens? So that they know exactly where we stand on it with regards to our, our implementation of the Sunshine Ordinance. I mean, I think my sense is we consider ourselves to be the guardian, okay, of the ordinance. And that if any changes were to happen, that it should be addressed. We should be consulted with at every turn, because we're working with it, all the time. And, if that's a message I would like to see go to them and say that, anytime, anywhere, in fact, we want an ordinance passed by the Board of Supervisors that says any implementation of Prop B that goes to amend or change any of the voter-approved ordinances regarding privacy, open meetings, or public records needs to be weighed in and given full weight and gravity of the Sunshine Task Force before it can be voted on.
I'm curious.
There's something like that.
Did you mention to me that we were consulted?
Yeah.
Did you?
We did.
And how did he take that?
Crickets.
It's like it was oversight, oops.
Right, it basically was, and I mentioned to him, you came for the past payment, that has really nothing to do with us.
I mean, the way Lee explained it to me when I broached the subject with him was that, and I realized that this could be just spinning, is that in his eyes or in his speech, Prop B is only to strengthen the Sunshine Ordinance further, which is why they felt that there was nothing wrong with moving forward on this, and that the language that's in the debate is his attempt in his mind of saying that it's only about strengthening the Sunshine Ordinance.
So if that's the case, then why not be upfront about it? At the time that you introduce it, hey, Bruce, hey, Victor, or Show, hey, let your folks know we're going to be introducing this legislation. I know, you're reiterating. I got it.
Lee told me.
I know.
Maybe that's Peskin's intention, but down the road, it's not another Board of Supervisors.
Exactly, and that's the issue, because now it's here, and who knows, 5, 10 years from now,
That's right.
how it'll be used in the
You don't know. I mean, go back to 2012, when you had a majority moderate, I'm talking politics now a little bit, when you had a majority moderate Board of Supervisors. What could in fact, let's not talk politics. There's been all kinds of laws that have been created that have certain kind of spin on it, where they actually set out to do something good, but there are all kinds of stuff in it that makes it not good. And the way it's presented is that it's presented as being good. And it's like, how does that play? Again, this says that it may not be implemented in a manner that is inconsistent with the voter-approved ordinances, okay? That it is not intended, had to do with something around intent. It provided that any such amendment is not inconsistent with the purpose or intent of the voter-approved ordinance. If it said purpose or findings, well, that'd be a different story, because that's what this is called, findings and purpose. Okay, that's pretty consistent, right? You can't be too interpretive about that, because the findings of purpose are law, but intent is not law. Intent is subjective. Who determines intent? you know, and then we have that conversation, we're having that.
So could we solve this by just by getting the Board of Supervisors to create an ordinance that defines intent as purpose, and then we...
It would be, yes, we could. It defines intent as being, we could.
Like, that's the easiest way that seems like everyone would, I mean, if we could get a supervisor to introduce it, it's hard to make an argument against it.
Problem is when you look at how supervisors operate, the question is if they'll say, is this frivolous? Do we really need this? Why do we have to go through, you know, I get a little concerned about stuff that seems like, you know, it's like, why is this coming to us? Just, you know, we already have the law, let's just not mess with it. You know, let's wait until there's a problem, and then we'll deal with it. That's a lot of ways that they'll deal with it. That's a lot of times the answer will come that way. You know, let's not create a solution for a problem that doesn't exist yet. You know, a lot of us are going to be here 5-10 years from now.
Right.
You know, and they'll be like, well, let those folks deal with it. You know, I mean, the question is, so that's why I'm saying is, we could do that, but at the same time, head it off at the pass.
Well, I'm suggesting heading off at the pass. I'm just suggesting that the cleanest way, without getting into the politics of this, is to just...
Well, what if then my concern is, they could then define it, they can then go through a committee, they can listen to public comment all they want all day, and then they themselves say, you know what, I still believe intent means this.
Not if it's defined, not if there's an ordinance that...
If the definition of what they could then define intent to whatever they want it to be.
No, but if we were to successfully put forward an ordinance that defined intent, if it defined that term in the law as...
I agree. The point is successfully. If you have a board of supervisors that will not agree to what we believe should the intent be, and they then start amending it to being something else, and then that gets passed, we have no control over what gets passed.
Sure, that's obvious.
So that's why I'm saying the first step would be, you cannot amend anything without the Sunshine Task Force's input on it that has a legal standing. So if you go against what the Sunshine Task Force deems is this particular amendment to be, then, you know, that goes on the record. And then that could be challenged in court. City and County of San Francisco, why did you not listen to your own people that don't do this all the time? They're charged with this work. Why did you feel compelled to do it some other way? They would have to come up with a really good reason. If not, the judge will say, forget it. This can't, you can't apply this.
So it seems like there's a fair amount of interest in doing something to cut this off at the pass.
I have some interest. If there isn't enough critical mass to have some interest in this, you know, okay. I think if we were having a discussion about this in a public meeting where people from the public were to, you know, come at a regular meeting, that they would have something to say, and they would...
Well, that was exactly what I was getting to, is that it seems like there's enough interest that I'd like to see this agendized on a future meeting so that we can hear from our engaged Sunshine supporters about this and really go about this through the process to actually make an action statement, because we're getting into like looking at different ways to fix this issue, and really it might make sense to hand it over to that process.
I just wanted to get it. I just wanted it to ruminate, and so you can digest it in a way that there has been some discussion about it out in the public arena, because you know, otherwise what ends up happening is we're just, you know, the prodigal child. We, you know, just, you know, we know what's best for you. You know, essentially, you know, that kind of thing.
Why is it in there? There's got to be a reason.
His office is right down the hall.
There's a reason
You can
it's
go and
there.
ask him, he's right, he's probably still there.
According to Lee, it's in there because it makes it easier to enhance the sunshine ordinance.
Can
Whether
they-
that's bullshit or not, I have no
I mean,
idea.
it would make it easier for them to, I mean, not that this is the only thing that would make it easier for them to do, but to fix the vacancy issue on the one seat.
Well, could they change the
Now that's-
requirements for any seat?
I mean, and that's,
Now they can.
would that be?
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
Exactly.
then it's a higher stakes
Right.
to control the sunshine.
Well, there is. I mean, I will also tell you that supervisors in the past have said that they would prefer there to be like professional hearing officers for the
Yeah,
Sunshine Task
I-
Force.
Yeah.
And, that prompted me to start looking into an external system, creating an external system that was kind of mandated by the state for every single county to have their own Sunshine Commission.
Right.
And that way, no local agency could have any control over them. They just operate, it's like a local district court kind of thing. Like a third rail, a fourth rail of government. And actually, it could live under something like the civil grand jury, in that kind of universe. Or it could live in the LAFCO type of structure. LAFCO, Local Area Formation Commission. Basically, these are nonprofit organizations that are government-funded, that are government nonprofits, and each county has one. So when there are joint powers authorities agreements, or if there are utilities that are coming in that affect many cities within a county, they have to go through this third party to get, and it has a full weight of law. They can't make decisions kind of counter to them. If they come and they do their own independent studies and whatnot, and they get funded by the city or the county of that area.
But some LAFCO boards are the board of supervisors in other counties.
But they are not supervisors. There always is supervisors on LAFCO, but they are directors. They're part of the board of directors.
But it's the same people using a different role in like...
But not all. There are additional members of the public that are on it, on top of that. It's not 100%.
Okay.
So here we have 4 supervisors, we have 1 member of the public and an alternate for that person. And it's interesting, when you look at what they do there, they step out of their supervisor role and are in this LAFCO role. They have a hell of a lot more freedom to be discussing and doing things that the Board of Supervisors may not want or can't do. And so it's kind of like, this is how we got community trace aggregation approved, was because of LAFCO and the work that we did, all the work the public did was through that body, because it was so independent that it refuted a lot of other studies that were bought or contracted through the city. So, yeah, it's a very valuable. So here, despite that, I'm saying is that the independence of the way the LAFCO structure and organization is created, and they have a central office in Sacramento that does training orientations, focuses on law that affects everybody in that kind of way. Or go under the judicial branch, which I think is actually a better way to go, but they don't have any money. So, and create a new division of the district courts, and just have a sunshine commission or a sunshine jury or whatever you want to call it in every district, and that, then people have to come to a courtroom, a real courtroom in a way, in the way they come to us. And
Or do it like water districts, it's an entirely other...
That's right.
Other meme on top of it, where you're voting for your sunshine representatives.
Well, if there's enterprise agencies, I mean, the MTA is a board of directors, independent of city government, completely. The only thing, city government can't even tell it what to do unless it passes law. And that's the only thing. They can't even tell them how to spend their money. All they can do is say, budget up, budget down. They can't even discuss specifics. They can hear about them and they can comment about them, but they can't make law directing how they spend their money. That's how independent enterprise agencies are. So, you were...
No, I was
say
just
something?
thinking about the kind of the concept of like a new layer, and that's more like a statewide, I guess, thing.
Yeah.
We're talking about passing a state law. Just wonder if that would then tinker with the notion that you would then have to exhaust those kinds of more like administrative remedies before you could go to court and sue. Like anyone can do before they come to us, they could, whether they do it themselves or they get a lawyer who can then get attorney's fees. But if you kind of create this other layer, which it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, as long as you could protect the right that you weren't required to go through this kind of other process before seeking court relief. Because sometimes there could be an emergency and somebody would then be stuck behind a longer administrative process.
But I'm not saying that it operates under the rules of a court.
Right.
It just lives there because of the structure of the district court. That it's a different division that has its own purpose and its own charge.
Right.
In that kind of way. And it's administrative for the purpose of oversight of this state law.
Right.
And so that the people have some way to address it. Because otherwise, if we didn't have a Sunshine Task Force here,
Right.
people would have to file writ of mandamus.
Right.
And there's law that's already, and there's money set aside for that. If you win, you hire a lawyer, all your lawyer fees get paid. You lose, sometimes you gotta pay. Okay? Sometimes. We know a few people that's happened.
And definitely, the independent issue is a big one, and that's probably especially when it comes to the legal counsel issue.
Right.
Because, talking about it earlier, it's really, even with the ability to set up ethical walls, the city attorney's office, or whichever agency, that attorney would come from, would basically not really get to work with any of those other agencies, sort of. It's just really, it gets real hairy real quick.
Yeah.
For that city attorney to basically, they would have to do task force, they would have to, but it would be cleaner than to do task force all the time only. Which would be better.
But here, instead of having the city attorney, you have somebody from the DA's office.
I think that would create a similar, I think we had a complaint the other day from the DA's office. With the calendars. You would still have, it would be best to have, some of the
And
changes.
be independent counsel.
Yeah, if you had a standalone, I don't know, I should know this, what are the ethics commission, do they have their own counsel, what do they use?
No, same thing, city attorney. And they are at odds with them all the time.
And that's going to happen because you've got to.
And all the ethics commissioners, they're all lawyers.
Judges.
Judges.
It's, the standalone kind of the independence issue from the city attorney's office, is one that matters because it's harder to get, the city attorneys who advise us are in a weird spot, I think, they can be. And it's hard for them in some cases to, it can be difficult to deal with those conflicts, both the practical ones and also the legal ones,
Right.
like who your client is.
We'll ruminate on it, think about it, because I've been thinking about it a long time, because, we're not going to be able to get amendments, true reform. I think it's the only way to go, because I think at some point or another, it's going to get diminished over time. And we're just going to lose the most powerful, what we got.
Yeah.
And so,
Bring back your discussion
Yeah.
with the doc sheet. Could you not just say, anytime there's a case of yours in front of us, we'll go back and use one of
I could ask, sure, I could ask them.
the 99% of the time?
It's just so unusual for Hitachi to come before us.
And if he does, we'll just use him with the city attorney.
Because he operates with, directly with another department, and, for anything, at least for the public defender, they're gonna actually want more sunshine out of the prosecution that is trying not to. There's very little that is not attorney-client privilege for the public defender that they could reveal at any time anyway. It's such a small universe for them compared to the prosecution the prosecution is just so vast in all the different investigative departments, you know, how much money they have. They've got the police department they're involved in. The public defender is involved with essentially one entity. That's their client. They really don't have they really don't have much access to many other departments that actually pertain to the case at hand, when you think about it.
I guess the key is getting the money that would be diverted to the DCA to...
Right, and I think with this Board of Supervisors, if we could make a case of it, that it could happen. And I don't think the mayor would be opposed to it either. But, you know, the question is getting the city attorney to give up the money.
It might be worth
And nobody wants to give up budget money.
It might be worth filing a public records request to the Public Defender's Office with how many public records requests they've received over the last X amount of time, because...
We can just ask them for a report. I mean, that's actually one of the items that we have here, is to discuss, something was either CAC or your committee to bring discussion of a particular department. You know, I mean, we could do
Talking of committees,
that kind of thing.
should we get to that?
Yeah, we can move on, but let's just wrap this up for a moment. But yeah, I think either way, we could ask them for a sunshine report, absolutely. But, you know, that's...
And I'm curious, Doug, how many dogs do we actually get in the budget, or do we just get hours?
We just get hours.
And we don't know what that means, right?
No.
Well, you can figure out what hours are.
We can apply that to how much to get paid, but officially, they're assigned hours to specific departments.
Those hours have gone down over the years.
They've said that it's been the same, but we haven't talked to them about it in a few years.
Yeah. All right, so we have gone through some discussion around the complaint procedure. Is there anything around the complaint procedure that anybody's concerns about at this point? Is there something you may not understand or want? The only thing I would say around the complaint procedure is this. So the way we start is each party gets their 5 minutes in their initial presentation testimony. Not debatable, we don't interrupt them, they just get their 5 minutes to present their case. Then we go into a section of question and answers. This question and answer period, my sense to make it a little more streamlined is to keep it really for clarification. You really are trying to get information, maybe they didn't present well, or they didn't present enough of, it doesn't match what the information that was presented. You know, you're trying to get clarification. You hope that the committee that it came from, you know, made sure that all the information, you know, got all the information that was necessary to present a full case. Once you get that, then, and we have that information, and we're having some discussion leading up to possibly a motion, okay? Then we hear the rebuttals. The rebuttal is for each side to say what he or she said was wrong, and what I'm saying is right, okay? And that is just their last ability to be able to try and counter their adversary or the other party. Then after the rebuttals, that's the time when we start debating where the violation is, based upon the information that's presented. It's going to take it's taken me a long time to get this. I try to discipline myself to try and compartmentalize, you know, this kind of thing. It's hard. Because you want to try, all of a sudden they say something, you're like, wow, that's a blatant violation. You know, it's like, I have to like curb myself and write it down and say, okay, when they said this, that was a blatant violation. Then after they finish rebuttal, then I can discuss that part, because then their turn is over. It is over, you know, it's just like Supreme Court time, you know? They go back in their chambers and they think about whatever it is, and then they produce it, they come back and they produce an opinion, and nobody can say anything, really. So, you know, it helps kind of shape how our procedure is, and it makes very clear to people, you know, where the question and answer period to get everything out, and it's, you know, and maybe, I've been trying to time the clarification section to be about 20 to 30 minutes, so that way each case gets about 40 to 45 minutes. Okay? So that middle part, where we usually take a lot of time, I usually try to keep that to 20 to 30 minutes, best as I can. And generally, I would maybe hold to myself, if it started to go over, and say, maybe we need more time, let's continue, maybe we should continue this. Okay? And, you know, and sometimes not even get to rebuttals. Continue it to continue the question and answer part, you know, depending on where we are in the process, okay? So I want you to think about how all that is, but I think it will help not only streamline it, it will help shape and how our, kind of the way the process was designed. I think it was designed this way. And because the period of time after rebuttals and getting to a motion should be in the creation of the motion. You're having debate to try and come to a conclusion that something has happened, you know, now that you have all the information, okay? Sometimes, yeah, okay, you know, I'm missing something. Can I ask somebody, and okay, well, make it a rare occasion. Try to make it a rare occasion, okay? And if you really feel like, you know what, I really need this other information, I cannot make a decision on it, you know, so either I will vote no, or you can make a stand. I'm not saying filibuster, but you can make a convincing argument to continue, or some other way to do it. And so I'm not going to tell you how or why, instruct you or direct you anyway, just have your freedom to do that, but think about it. But I think just in the course of compartmentalizing how the complaint process is blocked off in these particular sections, I think they have meaning. I think there's a lot of meaning for that and purpose.
Just to go back to that, in a recent case we heard, you know, they had the opening presentation, there was a lot of back and forth, you know, where we questioned both parties, and I know some of the members were coming towards a motion finding a violation, but then we lost the plaintiff, and we hadn't been through the rebuttals, and so we couldn't get a motion on the floor. Mm-hmm. I know in the past that we have put motions on the floor before we've had rebuttals. Mm-hmm. Incorrectly or not, we have done that. You could argue that, you know, a plaintiff can say, well, now I can do my rebuttal on the direction you're going. That's, I mean, there's some value to that too. I know there's the Robert's rules and everything else, but you know, there was a lot of, you know, we were a good 20, 30 minutes into that case. You could almost argue the group, you know, had what they needed, and so, you know, I'm just curious why you didn't entertain a motion at that point.
I think the discussion, if I'm reading the right case, I think the discussion was that the complainant should be offered the opportunity to finish out the process. Because we hadn't gotten to rebuttals.
Right.
So that was the point, was that they didn't get to be able to counter-argue, have a counter-argument, you know, based on what was happening. So I think because we didn't get to finish the project, now if we finished with rebuttals and then that happened, we had then finished our discovery. We had finished pretty much the whole process, and now it's in our hands. Okay? They then have to sit down and take whatever we dish out.
Had the plaintiff still been there in the room, we could have talked about a motion, or a motion could have been introduced with them still there.
Yeah, because then the process would have finished. Yeah, if he wasn't there, that's different.
What I'm saying is we could have had a motion put forward, Then, you could have had public comment on the motion. Then you could have taken rebuttals,
No, why would you take rebuttals after a motion's been made?
because you have to get through them. But I mean, you could have a motion, I thought you could have a motion anytime, at any point.
No, we have, the public is afforded a process, okay? So everybody's got to have that. You know, if you shortchange somebody on the process, that's a due process issue. Now, I don't know if we're governed necessarily by due process, but because we have an administrative process and it has some quasi-legal standing, because it could be challenged that they were discriminated against or they weren't provided the full opportunity, in that kind of way. So I think we have to be consistent.
Yeah, I got it.
You know,
I
have
know
to
in
be
the past
consistent.
it has happened that way before you were, and that's not necessarily right.
Yeah, I would urge not to do that, because the history, we have precedent.
Right.
And you start changing precedent, and somebody's going to raise a red flag for somebody's, and then they're going to worry about the efficacy. Like, that's when they start calling us a kangaroo court, okay? When we start, like, blowing our own rules, and our own processes. And it really bothers me when somebody says that, because it's like cartoonish in a way. And I'm like, we're not that. I mean, come to a meeting and see what we're doing. You're just saying that because you hear that from other people,
What about when someone just walks out because they're frustrated with the whole thing?
If somebody is forfeiting, that's different.
But they don't say it, but they just leave.
Well-
It's happened once or twice.
Yeah, so I think I don't think there should be a hard and fast rule. I think it should be up to the conditions of what's happening in that moment, and the body to decide then, shall we put the question to the body, shall we continue this item, or shall we forge ahead? Okay? If it's, because even though somebody might get frustrated, you may not know what's going on in that person's head. They may not really be frustrated. Maybe they are, something else is going on for them, and you don't really know what's happening. So, maybe they got nauseous all of a sudden, or, they got sick or something. It's, you never know what's going on. So I always would give the parties the benefit of the doubt and try not to interpret what's happening, what's going on. Because think about it, what if that happened in a real court? Somebody just got up and they walked out. You don't know, maybe they had to really go to the bathroom really badly, and they didn't want to say that. They didn't want to embarrass themselves. They just, in their own minds, it was the best thing to do is just to run out.
Okay.
I just get a little concerned if we take too much latitude and not give, that's a good time to table. Just table the item and see if they come back. At least by the end of the meeting, if they don't, then you can take it off the table and dispense with it in a certain way. You could either say, okay, it seems like they didn't come back. If it seems like the person is genuine, you could say, hey, administrators, please call this person, find out what happened. Do they want to continue with the case or not? That kind of thing.
So for what it's worth, I get the due process, I understand that. And I guess I'm just wondering how much as a chair you can reach out and say, look, and I know you have to kind of walk a tightrope here, but you could argue if you just go with the conditions of the current building policy and you come in with your service animal on leash, get through your cases, and then move on, that'd be great. However, you've got to love a guy who's fighting for our principles in his adopted country. I also checked, it was a sheriff that called in his dog and had it picked up. I checked on that. I have
Yes, the guns were drawn.
Yeah. They were the
Guns are drawn?
Guns were drawn, that's what he said,
On the
yeah.
dog?
On the dog.
What was that?
The guns were drawn.
On the
That's
dog.
on the dog.
Wow, that was not in the report.
That's what he told me.
Yeah. Well, in the report, I'll tell you guys what it said. It just said that Deputy so-and-so called it in, said the dog was off-leash, and was barking at people. And you want to tell the plaintiff, just, if you're going to leash it somewhere, give it someone to hold, whatever. That's all aside. But the fact that that party was the next, in front of us by doing this.
So let's generalize this a little bit,
Yeah.
because I don't want to get into too much detail. So if there's a situation, for instance, we have a barrier issue, okay? Somebody is being prevented from coming to one of our meetings. Could be any meeting. Doesn't have to be our meeting, but this just happens to be us, okay? And this is our bailiwick, okay? So somebody is being prevented from coming into our meeting, duly has an ability to do so, okay? The question then becomes, if you think about it, and lawyers correct me, when there are issues that are tertiary, that prohibit or impede on the process, you deal with those issues first so that the process can move forward. Is that a proper, kind of judicial procedure? Like you deal with the technicalities, get the technicalities all out of the way so everybody understands what the technicality is so that the case can move forward, because there are maybe questions, or there may be some conflicts within how things are presented.
Like threshold issues.
Yeah, for whatever reason, there's some, like inconsistencies, or there is a misinterpretation of how, things needed to be presented. And so a judge can have a special hearing to discuss just the technical points so that they could be dealt with. And everybody then comes to an agreement. Once everybody comes to agreement, okay, then they can start the trial, kind of thing. And I'm wondering if there might not be a similar issue with that, where we have a technicality where there seems to be, according to our rules, in fact, the law that we're trying to adjudicate actually says that this person can't be prohibited, and because it's dealing with an ADA issue, that now we are dealing with a more technical matter.
Yeah, I think that's the tough, it's so hard, because it's not, and this is,
But the complainant can't get his day in court. He can't get to even finish out an entire hearing because he's being affected by technicalities that are created somewhere else that actually impinge upon other parts of the law that's in our jurisdiction.
And the fact, in the 675 that we were looking at, we can't even talk about it because you can't get there. It does directly.
Exactly. So the question becomes do not even process the case that he has presented his complaint for until this issue is dealt with. And I think we can take it upon, if we're seeing like this is happening in our face, and we are actually seeing a department violating the Sunshine Ordinance, can we take up the issue as the task force?
can it be?
Because it's affecting us directly.
Can it be referred?
What do you mean referred?
Like,
to who?
to I don't know,
We could refer to the district attorney.
yeah, or the mayor, sorry, I know that it sounded like it's been ineffective so far, but the mayor's disability.
That's not what they do, but.
Because to me, what I was having, sorry.
It could be.
No, it
really.
actually should be, because
Yeah.
for some of the work I do in affordable housing, we can't move our projects forward unless the mayor's
Whereas-
office of disability
yeah,
comes and signs off
inspects it,
on it, right? So,
But
because
that party, they also drafted this.
yeah, I know, and the question, so that's what I'm talking about. We can't even get to the point of hearing the case that is before us. That has nothing to do with the rest of the stuff. That he's asking for other information, that has nothing to do with his access to a meeting.
Because I thought about the access, just the issue to access to the building. I don't know how, it's almost like a bouncer at the front door. It says you get in, you don't get in. and there's no, like, okay, well, my service animal can't be on leash, whatever, and, well, what documentation? Well, I don't have any. Well,
There's no requirement.
right, but if there's, in the 80, sorry, I don't want to get too,
So the ADA law has
Specific.
a second, says your animal must be on leash unless.
right, and then
They've just cut off that unless, and they don't allow.
Well, it provides two
It's an and.
examples. It provides two examples, and one is, which is the one I picture playing out here, where, just because it would be such a
You
terrible...
could talk, you could freely talk about it because it's not applicable to the case.
Right, so
Okay,
if,
so-
if an Army veteran came to San Francisco City Hall and had his service dog that he needed to inspect the rotunda,
Right.
and then the sheriff doesn't allow it, and the story the next day is San Francisco City Hall denies access to Army veteran, double amputee.
Right.
He doesn't have, you know, I just can't believe that there's not a process within the city government to address that specific issue. I mean,
There isn't, there is and there isn't. And what there isn't, when there isn't, because nobody will cooperate, is that you have to go to court. You have to sue them. And and basically, the lawsuit is denial of due process.
right.
You know, based on city law, right? And the city law is below the ADA. So you then first have to, you're probably gonna have to take it to a US District Court. You know?
All that aside,
Yeah.
going back to what you said earlier, can we not as a body say, this department, you know,
Can we hold the department in,
the department head in
we have,
violation?
the only thing that, in my recollection, we have not taken, the task force has not taken a body by itself without a complainant to violation. What we have done, though, is we have compelled departments to show up at EOT for training based upon a host of complaints that had come, so that they could be read exactly how we interpret things to be. And that's basically the extent that we have taken departments to task. The only other thing was to go and do trainings with them, so that they hear it straight from the
We
horse's
not
mouth.
just write a letter advising them from the head.
If you want to pass a resolution stating whatever you want based upon our experience of what happened that day.
It's happened twice, the same thing.
Right, so, we urge that this be, and we could CC it to the DA, we could CC it to the Attorney General, we could CC it to the new U.S. Attorney General,
And basically just tell
who
them
says he will be unbiased.
their policy is not in lockstep with what ADA's, and that appears to us. I mean,
Right,
what I've heard.
that is right. And the other thing I would say is I would say before we do that, Fiona and I have been commiserating on this. We ourselves have disabilities and have to deal with a lot of this stuff. And we're advocates, and all that. And we know people that we could consult with to see what they say. Here's a hypothetical. Or here's a real thing, here's what's happening, it's, so what, can you provide us with your opinion? And that could help advise us.
And some of the old, your members don't know, but we've been dealing with this gentleman for a couple of years now, before your time, and he's gone from, an injury off the dog designated as a service animal that was denied on MTA, was denied low-income housing, he's now homeless on the streets, and also denied getting to City Hall to argue his cases. So there's 3 areas that he's perfected, and he keeps saying it's ruined my life. I believe it from what I see, so.
Well, I'll ask some lawyers too.
Sure, that'd be great.
So just for, because as you say, this has been going on for so long, and I haven't even been on the task force that long, and I've seen several episodes of this. Is it overstepping for us to see if we can get a volunteer who can be with his dog outside so he can come to the next meeting, just so we can move forward? Is that,
I
that's
did
what we're
that
saying?
once.
Yeah,
Did it.
and actually, it's in the ordinance that it's not a requirement
The
to
ADA
provide accommodation. I'm sorry, in the
Actually,
ADA.
ADA says they do not have to provide accommodation,
Right.
that's true. But could someone else voluntarily go do it?
Absolutely,
Their dog.
The other
runs
option is we can let
under-
him testify via phone, right?
yeah,
Yeah, he could sit in Pete's Coffee or
He could.
something.
But he needs to ask us for accommodations.
right.
We
Yeah.
could tell him that
We tell that's
that's,
an option.
we could tell him that's
We have told
available.
him in the past, I think.
You know, I
I'm
just,
sorry, hold on,
Not
Fiona
since
was
this
talking.
last incident.
I
We
just
haven't
think
talked about.
we can tell him that that's an available option, and if he chooses to avail himself, then he chooses to avail himself.
Mhm.
If not, you know.
Yeah, not since this incident have we brought up that
Yeah.
subject. And I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about it before I speak with him.
Yeah, I would encourage you to encourage him
Reach
to
out.
Yeah.
do it by phone. I'm not able to keep a straight conversation with him. He wants to constantly talk about his case and all the stuff that's happening to him. So
Yeah.
if you have the ability for him to, I would suggest it
Yeah, I can call him.
because,
You are able
We-
to contact him?
Yeah, I have his telephone number.
Okay.
We have his telephone number.
yeah, we have many, many times, even people who are filed as anonymous, to call. And that way they stay, really anonymous.
I'm thinking that he's just gonna stay by his principles and say, I should be able to come in with my dog.
He will,
I love him
but
for doing that. I wish he wouldn't.
I know, but the thing is he thinks that we can do something about that.
Right, he thinks.
And that it goes a little bit, that's why I'm saying the only thing that we can do has to be outside. We can't deal with it in the middle of his case. It is a tertiary issue. And if we're finding that government is preventing people from coming in the building to see us for any reason. I mean, this was also that there was a big case around the tasers, where they emptied the room, and then they emptied the whole building. And then they didn't tell
Right.
people where they moved the meeting to some other
Yeah.
room.
Yeah.
And they didn't tell anybody. I mean, that was another big deal.
I mean, anybody can file a complaint, right?
Mhm.
And can't someone, I mean, because the idea ought to be that, if there's a violation, it's against everybody, right? Because it's the public in general, so whether it's one person or the entire city and county or, maybe whatever. I mean, it's a violation, so anybody who, even if they're not the person who was directly aggrieved,
Right.
can anybody file?
So it's a class action.
Or just, just
Group
I
effect.
don't know if that's, I don't think, I mean, it's an ordinance or not, but, someone, I don't know.
It's a written policy, so I think that would be okay.
Yeah.
If someone else filed a complaint, or,
But here's the
or
thing.
in any other kind of scenario where, the task force altogether, or an individual member of the task force, thinks that there's a violation that's systemic, or that actually affects the task force altogether, this will raise a whole other can of worms, but that person, could they not also file a complaint and recuse himself from the...
So here,
Try that.
I assume it involves a refusal and a participation.
It's gotta be easier these days with more people on Josh.
Well, no, the issue was that then when parallel issues came up with other complaints,
Right.
the
Oh, right.
oblique recusal, and it got.
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm not suggesting it's easiest, that would be a pretty, extraordinary circumstance.
So Bruce, could you, not to interrupt, but going back to the fact that Cheryl seems to be able to talk and reason with them, could she explain, we have other ways of doing this, we respect your principles, but would you consider coming in on leash with your service animal, just enough so we can get our work done to help you?
I can certainly explain that to him, but
Yeah, he's past that, okay.
well,
Fine, I saw that.
he comes up with more arguments as to why he won't leash his dog.
this goes back to why this is, for him,
Yeah.
why this whole situation
Yeah.
of him being denied access on Muni. So this is,
His whole principle is that he should be allowed to use his dog,
Off leash.
not off leash.
Yeah. That he's, and he did get that letter from the court that said,
Right, that's,
you know,
so the other, I mean, there's a number of different things that we can do. I think we can research to find out if we could take up an issue and invoke a hearing ourselves on something that we may feel is, blatantly, discriminatory, what have you. I'm not quite sure. The other part is in 6730C, the task force shall advise the Board of Supervisors and provide information to other city departments on appropriate ways in which to implement this chapter. So we can actually send a communication, we can send a citywide memo saying, with regards to public meetings, it is through our research and through subject matter, through experts, through opinions, court opinions, or whatever, that we find that the practices for people with disabilities that have service dogs for this particular issue, they must be allowed in these meetings, and to the sheriff too. That it's not, sheriff cannot arbitrarily, do this or that. And you'll find, if you sit and talk to the sheriff, they'll say, whatever the law says, that's what I'm going to do.
Right, see, and that's the thing, it's who makes the determination after all, right?
That's right. So the thing is if you make a law about it, or you make a policy about it, or if there's a resolution that the city and county of San Francisco believes this should be the way, that carries weight. I think that carries enough weight, because then otherwise the newspapers are going to come out and say, holy, these people are violating the will of the people, whether it's resolution or law. So, I think it's a worthwhile strategy to do that with the limited power and authority that we have. But to use what we can, which is the power of our voice, and the fact that we are an official government body, I think it's worthwhile. And the law says that we shall advise, when we find that the laws, and this is in our jurisdiction, right, for access to public meetings. So
would you like me to phone him, like in the near future, or do you want to wait?
I would say, let's just talk about the best way to contact him and whatnot. But I would like to encourage him to, at least get through a case where this isn't happening in the middle of the case. Call in for one. You can try to come in for another one. Change it up a little bit, just so you can get some movement. Because otherwise, it's for him. I just feel
he's convinced that the whole world is against him now,
I
and
know.
that he's upset that his cases have taken a year to adjudicate or whatever.
Right.
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
I'm sorry. No, and it's the extension of time that seems to be also frustrating him, so that he can't really. Sometimes I see that sometimes it's hard for him to process why things have happened the way they are. So I don't argue with him. I don't say anything. I just try to come up with suggestions.
So, sorry.
It's all right.
So, did you explain after the incident, the most recent incident, did you explain why that we stopped the case and they don't have to come back?
I tried to. I did.
Okay.
I tried to.
Okay.
He's just.
And did you say that
He thinks that part of the reason it hasn't is deliberate on our part, and I know, exactly. I tried very hard to convince him that we really want to hear his case, that people
we're trying to do this for his
we
benefit?
were trying to do this for his benefit. I said, you had a service animal, we've all had pets.
Yeah.
We understand what it means to have your dog taken from you. And when he said guns were drawn, I went, oh my God.
And when he picks his dog up, he has to pay $105, which he doesn't have.
Yeah, exactly.
They probably should have.
Matt,
They probably should have charged him.
you're going to say something?
Just a thought, and I guess this kind of goes to what you were saying earlier, that we've kind of gone through all the process except for, I guess, the rebuttal part, right? And then, so there's not a need necessarily to have another round of opening and then another round of the city's response. And then, I mean, unless somebody thinks that would be helpful, then that's fine. But I mean, if we've gone through and just kind of continued consideration and any kind of vote, just because for the purpose of having rebuttal.
We can ask him if he wants to waive rebuttal, so that a vote can be,
Or to do it by phone. I mean, either of those options. I mean, and it could be, I mean, I don't know if
So
it goes.
the process to the respondent as well, the rebuttal.
I mean, do we? And that's the thing, that's one of the things about the back and forth process, looking at, I mean, do we have to, I mean, maybe, I guess in a sense, I mean, to overstate it, I guess, the city agency is kind of like the defendant, and they're as equally entitled, I guess, to, their position in the rebuttal process. So I guess that's.
Well, I often wonder if, because this is kind of somewhat of a litigious matter, and if we're, I mean, I wonder if it's worthwhile to notify the DA about it and say that we have an issue here where somebody's actively being violated. It seems like they're being violated by the law that we're trying to implement and adjudicate for a case that that involves some of the similar issues, and we can't even proceed with our case because the city has continually prevented him, and we feel that it's against the Sunshine Ordinance. Now, we have the ability to engage with the district attorney for such, and the attorney general, when we feel that there's a violation of the ordinance, for enforcement. And this is kind of I think this is one of those, we're not looking for penalties, we're looking for, civil rights.
If we wanted to be really dramatic, what we would do is move the first part of our hearing outside. And I know we have to record things, and then make, I mean, that would be.
Hold court out, punch down the stairs.
Literally, the meeting location would be changed in the place that.
I don't know if it's usually in the charge of that particular commission. I don't know. I don't know if we can I don't know if the ordinance requires us to have our meetings in City Hall.
Yeah, that's what I was looking to see. It just said
It's a notice issue, so
Well,
you just have to.
but
Well, I think we just notice it and we say we're
Well,
gonna.
I wouldn't say front of City Hall, I would say see if we can get room over at Superior Court across the street, because they have accepted.
He already has a letter
Where
from
he
us.
already has a letter, where he's
That's
already been
interesting.
accepted.
That's an interesting idea, actually.
It's a great idea.
Do anybody know a judge over there that would give up?
I would
their-
start with the clerk's office.
Oh, okay.
That's
So
what
we'd
I
want to
would
do that as a special
Sounds like you're familiar
meeting.
with it.
As a special
Opposed
meeting,
to, yeah.
This would be a special
Well,
hearing.
Cheryl's familiar with 450 McAllister, so.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Okay.
When I get back on Tuesday, I'll give it a shot. I will call them and call the clerk of the court and explain our situation.
Maybe
And
also
ask.
refer to the War Memorial.
See,
Well, he
can
already
you get in
accepted
there?
the Superior Court.
So we check with that, but we have meeting rooms in the War Memorial.
Yeah, but
City property.
will they allow him in without his
Without his dog
dog
leash.
unleashed?
It's a City Hall policy, it's not a War Memorial policy, so
Okay.
All right, well, then I'll try both.
we can check.
Okay,
We'll
that'd be
check
good,
both.
find a different venue.
The second part of this is
That's
going back to
an
what Robin was saying. I think he just really needs some help. And
So, right.
That's something we can do,
I mean,
but
it's what he wants. I don't think we can give him.
No, but see, this is why I think if we went to the DA and the DA, because that's the job of the Attorney General to the DAs is to oversee actually government, in these kind of ways, and so if they can compel them to follow the law appropriately, that you can't violate not just this person, but any person in the same way, be it the veteran with PTSD for their dog off leash, whatever, the city hasn't made a case as to, they just said, he doesn't seem like he needs to have his dog off leash.
I know that.
And that's-
That guy just goes up there, what's his name?
Gavin.
He keeps saying, oh, he said something else, you know.
That kind of,
Slap.
it's not, like, I'll be just, well, here's a good example. I go to the airport, right? I have my service dog with me, okay? The TSA wants to take the dog separately. I say, no, you can't do that. They go, we have to. I go, it's against the ADA. You can't separate me from my dog, okay? You have to allow me to do it the way I want to do it. I downstay the dog, I go through the metal detector, and they call the dog after me, okay? And then the TSA folks, they get all upset, then they call the sheriff over, or they call the CHP or whatever, they call the real police, they call them over, okay? That person then says, oh no, you have to let him do what he needs to do. They know what the law is supposed to be, okay? So, you know, it's, and then at the same time, if it doesn't look like the dog, I've seen this with other people, it doesn't seem like the dog is doing their job. They basically take the person off to the side, and law enforcement can determine whether the dog is performing the job for what that person's disability is. If it's obvious that they are not performing their job, off day, faker, whatever, they can deny access at that point, okay? This is different, okay, because nobody is saying that. Nobody is saying that we've tested this, or we've challenged this, or they're just arbitrarily.
That's where I think the city would want just as much clarification in the long run as the complainant. I mean, it doesn't help them to be exposed like that. It doesn't. And there should be a process, and if there's an easy way to do it, and there's a more expensive way to do it, and...
Okay, I want to, we're going to start going in circles here, so think about it. There are a couple ideas on the table. Something kind of bubbles up for you. We've got some other ways we can engage them. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out that way. Okay, so the only last things are really just the bylaws. So I'm not going to go through the whole bylaws. The only concern I have, which is in the ordinance, and this has come up before, is around attendance. Attendance, the only reason why I bring it up is because it's not even the chair's activity to monitor attendance. It is the administrator. The administrator sends out the warnings and all that. We meet 12 times a year, if you think about it, as a task force. The attendance is based upon the task force meetings, not necessarily the committee meetings, okay? So the question of an excused absence, so that it doesn't count, I think that should be a collective decision. I don't know whether it should be hard and fast in the bylaws, or whether it should be a board resolution or guideline that each task force, iteration of the task force will determine on their own, as moving forward.
I think you had said that you were, that you wanted the rules committee to take this up.
I do, but to determine how it should be implemented. I mean, the question, I'm just saying there could be different ways that we can implement it. It could be just, it applies just for our iteration, our term, and then the next term will determine how they want to do it. Or we could create it as, and amend our bylaws. Because the ordinance is, has some pretty clear language in it with regards to the term. It just says procedures and criteria for removing members for non-attendance. Task Force Commission, here it says the Task Force Commission shall approve bylaws specifying a general schedule for meetings, requirements for attendance by task force members, and procedures and criteria for removing. And then we have bylaws that discuss, that was two, and then after that, you get a warning. And then after that, then there's discussion for removal.
So after 4 absences in 12 months.
No, after 2, you get a warning, and then after the third one, then there's another process.
One thing I'll just maybe throw a word of caution in there. 6 years ago, when we were barely quorum, and we had issues with not having, before we even got to the fact that we had a person with disabilities, and therefore could even be, a quorum. It puts another tool in the hands of the board of supervisors to, remove a person and shut us down. So there's a balancing there. I think ultimately it should go to the chair's discretion as to whether if it's a blatant, just this person can't be there and really needs to be removed quickly so he can get someone, that should be the chair's call. I think if it's something there's extenuating circumstances, again, that should fall the chair. I think it's hard to put a black and white and put it in our manual, so to speak, on something like this. I think they should stay exactly where it is, which I think is ultimately to call the chair. I think that's where it lies now.
After, I mean, I'm required to notify the board.
Yeah, required.
But in terms of what's a excused versus unexcused absence, that I believe is currently to the call of the chair, and it seems to
There is no
There's no such
excuse.
thing. We just kind of made that up.
Yeah, there is no written provision for allowing an excused absence.
So then it doesn't sound like we actually have any wiggle room at all here.
That's what I'm saying, is we can create something.
Could we just change shall to may?
In where, show me where.
In section 2, just say,
What page?
page 50.
You probably should get
You're making the lawyers
for,
That's hearing up.
So just, in section 2, the last sentence, if we just change it to if a third or subsequent absence from regular meeting occurs, the chair of the task force may notify the board of supervisors instead of shall notify. And then it's,
we really should reserve this for a scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
So here's a,
Judy noted.
here's a for instance. So for instance, Vice Chair Highland was gone for a few months. So under current circumstances, are we required to notify the board?
Right.
Well, here's the other thing, there's a planned absence, that's it. How do we deal with planned absences? Because you knew that you were going away for, you knew how long you were going to be away, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm saying. I think this needs to be flushed out, and because it's never been clear, and it's been, there have been, in the past, challenges to offering an excused absence. Where does it say that we can do that? You can't do that. I appeal the decision of the chair to be able to have any authority to do that. So, I think your solution is eloquent, but I think it should be discussed where the public has an opportunity to.
Where is I'm probably just...
Page 50, Article 2, Section 2, last sentence.
He's talking about
I'm talking about the
Attendance.
ordinance.
Oh, the ordinance, it's,
Not the bylaws, but the ordinance on what the absence issue.
so the absence issue is on page 34,
Is that 67?
E, 6730E.
Oh. But that's not, so that's procedures and criteria for removing members for non-attendance, but there's not a provision on what...
No, but requirements, it says, shall approve bylaws specifying general schedule for meetings, requirements for attendance.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm just saying in terms of there being a hard number.
Right.
I mean, it could absolutely just be in terms of...
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that this whole, because it's the bylaws,
Right.
it's ours.
Right, we can change
And
it.
we're self-imposing, right?
So it's not a requirement that there be X number, that they don't be excused, or even by the or even in the, I mean, we wouldn't want to go this far, but even, one unexcused absence at the discretion, the sole discretion of the chair, we could, I don't think we would vote for that, but we could, and, I mean, we could also say 6 or 3 or 2.
You can, whatever you want it to be.
or-
Right. So
There's not a provision.
Right,
Reserve this for the-
we just don't have it in the bylaws, and so there's no authority for it. There's no provision. Yeah, it's, it's funny, people like to, some people I know will say, well, if it's not in the bylaws, then you can do it. Right, and I'm like, no, it doesn't exist if it's not in the bylaws,
Yeah.
That means it's not in your universe. So it's, it's like you can't, it either tells you can do it or you can't do it. If it's not mentioned, it doesn't belong to
That's
you.
kid logic. You didn't say I could draw.
And anticipating my absence in March and April, just this is very important to me. I do think that we should, I mean, there should probably be a process by which there's maybe a, I know we'll talk about.
Okay, so you know what?
About this.
Yeah, we should.
Are you on the rules committee?
I think so, yeah.
He is
So
actually.
why don't you draw up some language to present to the chair? The chair will agendize it. We'll have a nice conversation.
Actually pick committee members for all the.
Yes,
Yeah, that's the
yes,
other thing
I'm
we're
just
gonna
gonna
do.
get to that. So this is bylaw stuff, this is self-imposed. Bylaws, from time to time get revised, but read it and see if what we're dealing with today, some of you are brand new, if you feel that there should be some other application, let's, give it to Fiona, she's the chair of rules, she'll put it on the agenda, you have a discussion about it, doesn't mean it's gonna pass.
Yeah.
Doesn't, you'll have a discussion, you figure it out, see what goes on with that. All right, let's talk about committee assignments. I don't know. Luam said she didn't want to do complaints anymore,
I
right?
think she said she wanted EOT, didn't she?
She wanted EOT. What do you want to do? Do you want to
I'd
stay
like to
with-
continue chairing EOT if that
You want
works, or.
you want to
It's
change
up
things
to
up?
the EOT to decide who's chair, how that works. but-
No, I make the chair makes the assignments for chair, and then you can call for members to join your committee. The
Okay.
chair calls for members. I don't generally make assignments to committee as far as people make their own choices, but it's, if people come to me and say, I really want to be chair of this committee, then there's no challenges to it, I'll consider it. So, if you want it, you want to remain in.
I would like to continue.
Okay, let me talk to Luam. She's not here, so she didn't come to the last meeting either, so,
She was in Spain.
I know. We're all in Spain.
And I said I wanted to see it.
Really planned out of the.
Just close your eyes. Dream of,
If we can at least do a complaint committee, because we have
Yeah.
a meeting in 2 weeks.
Okay, so if Luam is not going to, she doesn't want to stay on complaints,
She said she would chair
you'll-
for this upcoming meeting.
she will?
Yes,
Oh,
Oh, okay.
yes.
All right, do you want to stay for the one last meeting? You can say no.
I can. I could.
Question is, whether you could, but will you? Would you?
I did this meeting today, so,
It's
if
up.
anyone else can do it, fine. If you need people, I'll do it one more
You're
time.
so accommodating, I love you so much.
Bruce,
Yeah.
And I know I think it's April where we vote again on chair and vice
Yes.
chair. Maybe this is ahead of it, but I think if Luam is interested in the vice chair, I'll happily yield that to her. So that might be something that she might be more
Well,
interested in.
I'm happy to change things up, it's up to you guys, if you want, if you want to consider me to stay, it's fine, it's up to you. I'm happy to, I've been in many positions on this task force before, and it's all, everywhere, I can participate in all kinds of ways, so.
I think Roger had his eye on her.
I did say I wanted CAC.
You what?
I wanted CAC.
Do you want to be on CAC?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be chair of CAC?
I just want to be
Muscle in up, Frank?
I just want to be honest with you, because I already
Okay.
share rules.
Okay.
So,
Frank will be crushed.
I did say I wouldn't share, Frank wanted to step down,
Okay.
so I already share rules, so.
Okay, great.
I'm guessing Frank wants to continue to, he's
Most
very-
likely.
Yeah.
He's a good chair.
He's good. Yeah, I think
I will
he's
ask.
good.
Okay.
So anyway, I was just talking just about the vice chair, so somebody can pass on to Lou,
Okay.
if Josh wants to stay as he is.
Okay, all right, well, again, everybody speak up. If you have any questions about any committees, you can ask the committee chair, you can ask me, you can ask Chris.
What about technology chair, is that something you want to?
It's ad hoc, so, anybody can step up to take on that. I started it, and I wasn't chair, I just was a regular member of the task force at the time. But I started it because there wasn't anybody who had any technology experience on the task force at the time. And at the time, we were dealing with the use of PDFs
Yeah.
and the metadata situation, because they were being scanned as images and losing, and so members of the public were beginning to, who knew about this stuff.
You or I should probably sit on that for access reasons.
Yeah, sure, either one of us, sure, absolutely.
I'd like to do
The IT stuff, okay, sure.
I want to be on the.
It doesn't matter, it's an ad hoc committee,
Past 6 or past 5 or.
there's no requirement, a membership for that committee.
And if there's enough people that want, it can become a committee as the whole. Like,
But, it doesn't meet that often, so it's usually, meets at the call of whoever is chairing that, and you kind of take up whatever issues. The big issue for me is really that index of records. There's that, and the other one that Josh and I had started the ball rolling on is trying to develop a searchable database for all the orders of determination.
That'd be great.
Because
using the cameras that are filming us was the third item.
Right, that's
Yeah,
right.
and Rules Committee has signed a couple of, at our last meeting, we
We
signed a
did,
couple
we
items.
a couple of things, like changing the landing page,
Yeah.
one of them, and I'm trying to remember what to say.
So there's some items
The database.
for that committee, that's great, but, do it, show up, do the work, make it happen.
Do you want to go further and make Matthew the head?
Do you want to be the chair of the IT
I think
committee?
it'd be great if you be.
Sure.
You want to do it? Okay.
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Okay, make a notation of that.
Got it.
You are,
After this coming meeting, for this coming meeting, I still need to know who are the members.
I think I was on
The complaint committee.
the last month also.
yeah, it's the 2 lawyers and the one.
Okay, that'll be
So-
the next meeting.
Okay.
So
Three lawyers?
Three lawyers, yeah.
Yeah, there are 3 lawyers. One is official, and 2 that are, that's just their job.
This overkill, I think we need the lawyers on some of the other committees too. I mean,
Well, after the one leaves,
We can change it up again. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So Fiona, you're off the hook for this coming meeting.
Yeah.
right.
Good.
Yeah, just this last
We're
last
still going
one.
to do the complaint committee piggybacking something else typically or before. Yeah.
No,
I thought it's.
that's for the
standalone.
Rules Committee, because.
Yeah, it's standalone. Well, here's the thing.
There wasn't.
In the past, from 2012 forward, there was a big backlog, and so they had started assigning complaints to all committees.
Right.
And so the thing that I changed, there were 2 things that I changed when I came in. One was there will be no adjudications, no official kind of recommended rulings by the subcommittees, because the public should have the privilege and the pleasure of the entire body to do that.
Right.
Not just 3, and then it becomes a rubber stamp by the full task force. That's the way that it was run, and that is not good. I do not approve of that, even as a member of the public. The second thing is that, what I did retain was the ability for any committee to hear a complaint and find jurisdiction, and to determine if the records were public, because we are governed by a 45-day rule.
Right.
Okay, and that is it. If they want to make a recommendation because both parties agree and the respondent practically a please no contest, then fine, that's, you can report that, or make a recommendation. But you want to keep those complaint, kind of brief, what do you call it? They're like pre-hearings. You want to keep those that go rolling, okay? So that way you can have them come in. You're not really tearing down the details. You want to make sure that you're building the file.
Right.
Okay, that you have all the information, and all that. We have specific rules on when the deadlines are and all that. We want to keep people, their feet to the fire on that, that kind of stuff. But the whole idea is to create a workable file for the task force, so the task force doesn't have to flounder during its meeting because it doesn't have enough information on this issue or another.
What about, and I know we've talked about this some before, given the hour, we probably should just instead talk about it sometime later again. But quickly, what if, and I know the idea of a consent calendar at the task force is something you addressed that for reasons I agree with, is something we shouldn't do. But what about on the complaint committee level or if other committee levels are taking up the building the file level? And if you get the chair of the complaint committee or the chair of the rules committee, whoever's got a particular, for the build the file purposes goes, I can tell that there's everything here that the task force would need and what we would do by having people come in. So we put it on a consent calendar at the committee level and say, we find jurisdiction and we find it's public record and we, put this up to the full task force. And that way, there may be some false positives where it turns out after full discussion of the task force, somebody says, oh wait, there's this piece of information missing. And in that situation, it's unfortunate, but it's also, most of the time, you're probably going to have situations, at least you would hope, if the chair gets it right, that you're going to have people who don't have to then attend two separate meetings to get the same adjudication.
Okay, so I want you to be aware that we're all volunteers.
Right.
Okay, and so you're asking now for most of the labor to be put onto the chair to determine those things. So when the meeting comes, that they've come with, okay, this is what I think. What does everybody else think? That kind of thing. Well, I think it's a good idea and it's practical. I don't know if it's implementable. Unless you want to be the chair and you want to try it. That would be the only way at this point. Unless somebody else wants to step up.
At the committee level.
At the committee level.
And so that would mean that we wouldn't ask either party to attend the complaint committee hearings, is what you're saying?
Well, we would say just like for Lila, an hour, whenever you're an appointed person, they're like, you're going to be on the consent calendar of the Board of Supervisors. You can show up. You don't have to. And I think we would tell them, after whatever kind of advance notice, maybe this is something that's not practical because you don't get enough time, where you could say, the chair's designated this for the consent calendar.
Yeah, so
maybe that doesn't work because...
So logistically, okay, because Cheryl does a lot, okay?
Right.
And does it for all the committees. So the question is when you send out a draft agenda to a committee chair, how much time in advance is that of the meeting?
We like to post or send out notice of hearings 14 days prior to the meeting.
For the committee?
Yes, so we give it to the chair about 20 days ahead.
20 days, so that means that they have 6 days, let's say 5 days to review and determine whether something is going to be considered for consent, because you have to agendize that.
Right, no,
Right, so now we have the ability to combine cases if they are for very specific circumstances, right? Which has helped us a lot in certain, when we have one person filing a lot of cases, that on the same person for the same subject, but there are multiple violations that are independent of each other. We will vote to combine them all together, in that way. I mean, there are different variations of that, but...
Yeah, maybe it's just not workable because, it could be that the 6 days would be enough
Okay.
But it may not be workable because you have to tell because then you have to tell the parties, and then maybe, as the committee member ought to be able to say, like, I don't think this is ready for consent, I want to talk about it, and then what do you do whenever no one's
So
there?
I want to acknowledge that I hear you, that you're interested in this, that it's on your mind. Sleep on it. If you come up with an idea you want to, bring forward on it, make up write up a little written proposal. We'll put it on the agenda and we'll discuss it. And I agree. I don't want to I appreciate the brainstorming here. I think we're getting a little blurry-eyed and I'm hungry for real food, more protein.
Some more,
some hot paste. So I just want to, for the sake of time, I appreciate that and really thank you for doing that, because it's hard from term to term. Sometimes you get a real, like, they're lame duck from day one. Nobody doesn't want to participate. Or people have been around for so long, they're just so tired, they're just not into doing stuff anymore. So I really appreciate everybody's interest in trying to optimize and evolve what we do, and that's the only way we make this law better and better, and we make it implemented better and better. And we become really, truly the trailblazer. I've had members of government from Japan come here specifically to talk to us about sunshine, how we do it, because they're trying to increase democracy at the local level. And it's a very interesting conversation. Sometimes it's like, it doesn't compute for them on how our democracy works. But they hear us and they're like, wow, it's like, that's a different kind of freedom that we don't know about. So it's, what we do is important to a lot of people. And when it comes to like serious sunshine transparency stuff, then we become important. But until that, we're just, again, a kangaroo court for people's pleasure and amusement, over live cameras that the public doesn't get to see.
We have other city agencies in different parts of the country watching what we do, and we kind of are the trailblazers anyway, so we're trying to work together.
Yeah, I mean, the other way you can look at it too is, we can take a charge onto ourselves to set an example within a certain parameter. And we could, create an exemplar, we can exemplify some specific aspect and then write about it, get it published, and see if we can get some 15 minutes of fame out there. It's, even with everything that's going on in Washington, it could be one of those local stories. San Francisco, strongest sunshine, in San Francisco they can do it. Why can't we get Congress to do that to the White House, or, that kind of thing, it's, and government can create their own independent bodies for all kinds of stupid things, and for something like this, can't even get the independent bodies to do what they're supposed to do, there's a story out there for it, and we could boost our quote-unquote reputation just here in this building by doing something like that if we take ourselves seriously and don't care what anybody else thinks about us, because that has been somewhat the bane of our existence for a very long time. And anybody that steps up to do sunshine, they'll appoint you. And just like how no drama for the appointments. Why was that? When you ask supervisors, they say because there shouldn't be. There just shouldn't be. Not for this law. It's like anybody who steps up, we think that they are interested, and we interview them for that. So.
Well, I wouldn't have gone through so much anxiety if I'd known that.
It is a little, I mean, I get anxious too because, of what happened, but speech, I tend to go up there now and not say anything, just like, I'm here to answer any of your questions. Don't make me say something inadvertent.
Don't look anybody straight in the eye.
Yeah, all right, let's end it here. I don't
I
think
have one
there's...
thing I wanna say.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I want to thank Victor for all the months of training and help and assistance he's given me, because he's doing his best he can to make me look good in front of you guys, and I've learned a lot, and I just want to acknowledge all his help.
And Victor is like the master.
He is.
He is the master clerk.
He is.
I really,
Thank
it's
you
just
both.
a junior clerk with this.
I see him everywhere, he's not just here, guys.
Okay, he's really the sensei of...
He was barely a grasshopper in 7 years.
I should say the seafood. All right.
Do you need a adjourn?
Yeah,
We'll make it.
So,
Second.
shall we adjourn?
In memory of the lady.
Thank you.